And we'll start with Commissioner Whitgate.
Your package, please. Father God, we thank you for the many blessings that you give us each and every day, Lord. We ask that you just be with us as we make decisions that affect the people of this county. We ask that you be with our county, Lord, in troubled times. And just keep our young people safe, make our streets safer, Lord. Just give us wisdom to know what to do in order to curb the violence going on in our community, in our county, in our state, in our nation. We ask that you continue to be with us and bless all that we do. In your name we pray, Lord. Amen.
Amen. All right, we'll move on to item 1, is approval of the agenda. Has everybody's had time to look at that and the attachments to it?
Offer motion for approval.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Item 2, consent agenda. And the items listed in that, if anybody's here wants an agenda, they're on this. The attachments are in our packet, so anybody got any questions?
Approve the consent agenda as printed.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving right along. Item 3, Scotland County Schools. Robert Lowe. You are up.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners, County Manager. Good to be before you this morning. It's the first time you laid eyes on me for a lot of you, I'm sure.
If you would do right that corner right there, that way that camera picks up there.
Right here?
Yeah,
Very
that's
good.
fine. That's fine.
Okay. And we've been working on, of course, our budget presentation for some time. The information that you received, the digital copy, this is basically the same with the exception of the superintendent's budget message is in here, and we've included the 20-year pay down on the South Johnson Elementary School project, the debt service model. I wanted to share that with you because I have some comments this morning about that. With me this morning, Chairman Singletary, Board of Education, Mr. Jackson, board member, Mr. Chapman, our Executive Director of Operations, and Mr. Aaron Boyer, our budget consultant, who we have had working with us for the last, there's some extra copies of this if anyone who would like one. Our budget consultant, who has been working with us for the last 6 months, on some budget matters that I'll speak with you momentarily. So, we can go to the next slide. Inside the packet, the first thing that you'll see is the budget message for me. This is required by the state. Every school budget has to have a budget message from the superintendent. It basically presents the status of the budget, what the school district is asking for. Sometimes it contains a little status information, but also sort of projections of what we anticipate receiving. I may be one of the few individuals that have presented to you that has been on both sides of this table. I've served as county commissioner in Chatham County. I've served as a superintendent in 3 other districts. So I have a lot of, I'm gonna call it experience, rather than expertise in working with school budgets. However, I have to preface my comments this morning with the fact that I don't know the intricacies of this budget the way I would typically because I've only been here for 2 months. So I've only been working with this budget for a very short period of time. That's why I brought Mr. Ray with us this morning, because he has a greater, more deeper knowledge of the numbers, and he will be able to respond to, if you have specific, more in-depth questions about the budget, he can respond to those. The superintendent's budget message is the first thing in the packet. Then I'm going to go over some budget highlights with you, organizational structure, membership positions, allotment, financials, and program budget. I plan to speak to some of the questions that you may already have, as well as some of the things you may have heard relative to what's going on in the school system. So if I don't touch upon your questions, please interrupt me. And transparency is my goal this morning. I share with you, answer any questions you may have, and give you a good status update on the school system. So the budget challenges that the school system, not only ours, all school systems in the state are facing this year. Increased health hospitalization retirement benefits, that's almost an annual thing that all school systems go through, all public agencies go through every year. It's an increase in these two items. Salary increases for locally paid teachers to match state increases, and it's estimated at this time 4 to 6%. I realize the budget has already crossed over. It's in the short roads in the General Assembly relative to them acting on the budget. Aaron, what's the last thing you heard about 4, 6, 8% possible increase to teachers?
House budget was more, larger raises than the Senate budget, was 4.5% over 2 years. That came out Monday, so there'll be some compromises.
Very good. How that's relevant to us is that we have a considerable number of locally paid teachers, all school districts do. And whatever the increase is for the state paid employees, the state paid educators, we have to match that locally. We have to have the resources to pay the local teachers and anyone else that's locally paid, that's a professional educator. So that's always an increase in the budget. Inflation. Your public officials, you know what's going on with inflation. Currently it's at 5%. All of that will result in increased costs for goods and services in any agency, anyone who's buying and needing services and buying goods. The debt service on South Johnson Elementary School, I'm going to drill down into that momentarily. So I'm just going to leave it there. I know you're wondering, well, why is that considered a budget challenge? It's because it's how we have the payment structured in Scotland County. It's why it's a challenge. Exceptional children's services. The school district has a disproportionate number of special needs children. Typically, a school district will have somewhere between 12 to 14 to 15%. Scotland County has 18.1% of our children identified as exceptional special needs. The state only pays a school district, this is statewide, at a rate of 12.5%. Those are the funds we receive, necessary funding to pay for just that percentage of special needs children. So the additional services we have to provide with local dollars. And this number is higher than typical. Senate Bill 406, Choose Your School, Choose Your Future. If that bill passed, that's the bill that's moving substantial funds from the public school coffers over to access for private parochial charter schools. If this bill passes, it could drain anywhere between transfer between 200 million to 300 million from funds that have typically gone to public schools that will now go over to private schools. It's a voucher system. It's the payment of a voucher system by our General Assembly. But that's going to have an impact on school districts. All 114 of them will feel some impact from that. And increased utility costs. You're fully aware that Duke has gone to the State Utility Commission. They've asked for an increase in power costs in our state. We're anticipating that our utility costs could go up as much as 8% for 23-24. So these are the big challenges that we're looking at, the big things that the school district is facing and what we need resources for. Next slide. Fiscal management highlights. It was shared with me that last year, commissioners asked the school district, questioned the school district about the central office being top heavy. So the district office this year, 22-23, has made the following cuts. These are not cuts for 23-24. These are cuts that the school district has already made in the district office. We cut the director of technology, the director of instructional technology, director of elementary education, the technology team. There's 3 non-filled positions on the whole technology team. There are 3 vacancies on the maintenance team. We cut a finance specialist, clerical support, we cut by 1. The schools, except the high school still has 4 assistant principals. All of our other schools at one point had 2 APs. Now we've cut it back to 1. So we cut administration from all the schools and we consolidated a cost clerk in the auxiliary department. Auxiliary consists of child food service, transportation, maintenance, that area. So we took the work of 2 and consolidated it to 1. So these are cuts that the district has made this year relative to slimming back in the district office. And for the throw a little humor in, for about a month, the district didn't have a superintendent. so that was a savings for a period of time. Okay, please. Fiscal management highlights, utilization of fund balance. I know you've heard that the school district funds have been mismanaged. I want to put a different term in your thinking this morning. When you hear the term mismanaged, you think of something illegal. happened, that the money has somehow been inappropriately used in ways that aren't legal, acceptable, in keeping with state law. I want to use the term, rather than mismanagement, poorly managed or poor decisions made by the money. Nothing illegal has taken place with the school district funds that the staff has been able, the leadership has been able to identify at this point. What we have identified is that a lot of the funds have been used in ways that maybe in retrospect, we should have considered something different. Maybe a different superintendent would have recommended something different to the board of how the funds are utilized. Yes, the fund balance has been reduced from about 2.5 million to just about $500,000, really 400,000. So I wanted to share with you where that money has gone. So you will have an understanding of, well, what did the district do with that money over the last 2 years? Exceptional Children Program, I've already spoke to that we have 18.1% that we have to serve. The state only funds us at 12.5. We have to make that difference up from the school district funds. And a lot of that has to come from fund balance. So we took it from fund balance. The district took it from fund balance. Teacher supplement compensation. Because Scotland County is what we call a low wealth county. Oh, and I should have stated this when I first started. You know this, so I'm not going to, you know this. The allotment that you make to the school district based on the county's ability to support the schools is one of the best in the state. It's one of the highest in the state. The 10 million that you provide based upon the property tax assessment of Scotland County is good. And I thank you for that. It's outstanding. I've talked to a couple of other superintendents at a state awards program. The district won an award yesterday. I'll tell you about that momentarily. And I asked them, well, what are you asking for? What are you getting? And we've been getting 4, we're going to ask for 5, we've been getting 6, we're going to ask for 8. And when I told them, well, in Scotland, we get 10. Wow, that's excellent. Yes, it is. It is excellent. And thank you for that. And then with that, you're going to say to me, well, why are you going to ask for more? A little bit, just a little bit. It's not a lot more, it's just a little bit. So this teacher supplement compensation, this is one of those things that maybe the district could handle a little differently. The state provides to low wealth districts a pool of money, a pot of money that the districts are allowed to use as a supplement to teachers, to retain teachers, so that they are receiving the same amount of local supplement that teachers are getting in Wake or Chapel Hill or Dare or Asheville, some of the higher funded school districts. And it's still not equal to, but it helps to make up the difference. So there are guidelines that come from the state with this money. Who's eligible to receive the money? It's basically instructional support personnel and teachers. Administrators are not eligible, pre-K is not eligible. There's a whole list of people who work in the school district who aren't eligible to receive this money. Last year, the decision was made that those not eligible would receive some too, would receive a little local supplement. Well, the state money can't be used for that. So the additional money that was paid out to all employees for this teacher compensation supplement had to come from local funds. So that cut into the fund balance. Again, that's one of those decisions. Would I have recommended that to the board? Probably not. But it was recommended to the board. During COVID, everyone was kept on the payroll. Now, this is big. Let me explain that. Yes, all districts across this country received millions of dollars from the feds. It was called ESSER. And those ESSER funds, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in some school districts, billions of dollars from the federal government. That money was to be used for to make up the difference or to make up challenges that school districts were having as a result of the virus, of the pandemic. As you know, for about a year, not about a year, we weren't in school. Education was virtual. During that time, we continued to pay teachers, but we had to buy technology, we had to increase internet access, we had to make those adjustments so that we could educate the children in a different way, because we weren't face to face. But people like bus drivers, bus monitors, custodians, teacher assistants, they weren't working. We were using a few bus drivers to deliver school lunches and things of that nature, but for the greater part, those individuals were not doing the work that they typically do in the school district. But the decision was made to keep them employed, not to lay anybody off, but to keep them working. Now, that's not a bad decision. You may look at me and say, school districts are paying people who weren't working. People have to sustain. Because of the virus, we can't penalize or treat people such that we aren't going to look after them or take care of them. These people were going to come back into their jobs as soon as the pandemic was over. So in essence, we continued to keep them on the payroll and to pay them during that 12-month period of time that they weren't doing the typical work that they did. Well, again, we couldn't use federal dollars for that. We couldn't use state dollars for that. So we utilized local resources to do that. And the last thing is the debt service on South Johnson Elementary School. It's $2.1 million a year, and I've got a whole slide I'm going to talk about that. So we'll come back around to that. But that $2.1 million annual debt service that we pay on the school, that cuts into that $10 million allocation that you give us every year. So this is where the fund balance is going. Now, I'm going to stop there and ask if you have any questions. The money was not mismanaged. It wasn't illegally managed. It's just, would I have made all those decisions? I would pay for COVID. I would pay the employees. The teacher supplement compensation, probably wouldn't. That's water under the bridge. That's hindsight.
I have one question. The bus driver, et cetera, could any of these employees have received unemployment and we supplemented after unemployment?
And then we supplement after unemployment. Did any of the districts do that, that you're aware of, Mr. Moyer?
I would think unemployment would have a problem with that.
Because they're not unemployed.
Right.
You're still employed. Okay, let them out.
Are you aware of any other school districts doing that?
Again, I believe their answer is correct, that again, they weren't really unemployed, that they were sustaining their employment. So there were no many that did that during the COVID time, that they either used ESSER funds or kept them on payroll.
Except on payroll.
I do have a question.
Yes.
ESSER fund, they were earmarked for just certain things you could, thank you, I got you. Yeah. So the reason I was saying that because of John's question.
Yeah, that's a good question, sir. The ESSER funds were not a pool of discretionary money that the school districts could use for whatever. That money was earmarked for certain support type services for children. Some of it was for mental health services. A lot of it was for technology. Some of it was to be able to make that transition between teaching them face-to-face and teaching them remotely. So the last thing we want to do is misspend federal money. That is mismanagement. That is a problem. So we're still balancing out ESSER, by the way. We're still closing that money out.
Were the ESSER funds not available to pay that third item of there?
Not the things like that. We could use it to pay some employees, but not to pay employees who were not actually working.
And when you say that decision and the decision to use local funds to do supplements for ones that weren't necessarily designated to receive them, were local decisions, not state decisions.
The state sent a criteria. In fact, I would take to the board for approval next Monday, a different set of criteria for that money to be dispersed. And there's no reason whining and complaining, but I'm strictly adhering to the criteria of what I'm recommending to the board who receives that next year. No one outside that criteria am I recommending to receive any of the dollars. And, you know, it's a good thing. I'm glad the state's doing it. I'm glad some of our employees will receive a nice little extra check. This year was $5,000. Some of our employees got a supplemental check for $5,000. We paid it last month. We paid it in April. But now, doesn't mean they're gonna get 5,000 next year, depends on how much we get from the state. And it's my understanding it's gonna be less next year. That's what I heard. I'm looking at Aaron for confirmation, he's not saying anything. He's got an ear to what's going on in the General Assembly. Other questions before we leave? But yes, sir, that's exactly correct. Okay? To ensure stronger working budgets in the future, to ensure we have better oversight of the school district budget, the school district has either already done or in the process of doing the following things. The board has directed me to tighten the financial reins in the school system. Review all of the vendor contracts to ensure best pricing and timely implementation. Not only best pricing, but timely implementation. What do I mean by that? We looked at all of our vendor contracts, and if there were some contracts that could wait until later, we put them on hold. We put some things on hold. We didn't move forward with them. To try to reserve as much of this year's budget as possible. Implement best financial practices and protocols. I guess the best way to explain how our budget was managed over the last 2 years, we were sort of a cash out operations where, let me say that's a good way to describe it. There's something in North Carolina called the School Budget and Fiscal Control Act. That law lays out how school systems are supposed to manage their money. We were doing some things, a couple of people only were making all of the financial calls. Our budget this year is about $100 million. You can't, two people can't manage that kind of money. Now maybe, I don't know, maybe Elon Musk can, maybe Gates can, but I don't know pretty many average people that can manage large sums. They all have accountants. They all have people that help them with that. So we are restructuring the next bullet, hire a new finance officer. She reports next month. Part of what she will do will work with that gentleman right behind you there in orange shirt, and she will work with me. The finance, state law, the only person the school board supervises is the superintendent. And if he or she is not doing the job that they want done, they give it to the superintendent. The only person that reports directly to the superintendent is the finance officer. By law, the finance officer reports to the superintendent. So the finance officer and I, working in conjunction with our budget consultants, will start the process next week of restructuring our school district budget. Now, can you be more specific with that, Robert? Yes. We will set it up according to the School Budget and Fiscal Control Act, a way the state says a district school budget is supposed to be structured. I will share this with you. It's no compensation, but it's just fun fact. We're not the only district who has experience and is experienced in these types of issues. That's unfortunate to say, but again, our consultant is in multiple North Carolina school districts right now, straightening out the same sort of problem. So it's a challenge. North Carolina is facing the challenge of finding good superintendents, and we're in a challenge of finding good finance officers. We're very excited about the finance officers that we found. Ms. Juana Chavis, she's coming to us from Hope, where she's been a finance officer for the last 15 years. She's experienced. I've already interacted with her some. I'm really looking forward to working with her. And as I said to you earlier, in the districts that I served for 16, 17 years as a superintendent, I knew as much about my budget as my finance officer. And I'm sure the board will place that expectation on the new superintendent. Review and reconcile staffing and state allocations. When I get into the allocations, I will share with you how we actually receive money, what that money is based on. And we will monitor that, manage that more closely to make sure people are coded according to where they should be coded and paid from the funds that they should be paid from. The next one, monitor state positions and funds to ensure district is fully maximizing available state funding. What that means is where we can manipulate, we're going to manipulate. Where we can move people around, we're going to move people around. The more expensive people, we're gonna put on federal and state budgets. The less expensive people, we're gonna put on local budgets. That's how you get the biggest bang for your buck with a budget. You move your staffing around. Education is a people-heavy business. Our greatest asset and our greatest expense consists of our people. So you want to put them where it costs you as little as possible. Let the state and feds pay for it. And the last one, continue to seek and obtain grant funding. The district has done a stellar job with getting grants. I've been impressed, and I'm not easily impressed. I'm a recovering principal and superintendent, so a lot of things impress me. But the district has done a stellar job with its grants, of how it applies for and gets grants. And I'm gonna ask Mr. Chapman to talk about that momentarily. Okay, next one. So here's our proposed budget for 23-24. As I indicated, everything in the school district is based upon our numbers, the students. How many students we have? Our actual ADM, average daily membership, the number of children that we have in the school on any given day, is 5,435. The allotted ADM is 5,513. Now, and the projected is the same. Projection of what we're projecting to have as ADM, our number of students for next year. So we allot our resources to the schools on the basis of our projected student enrollment, student membership, 513. Projected allotted 5406. That is what we are thinking might be the actual number that shows up, because there's a difference between what's projected and what actually shows up. But an important number that I wanted you to see, over the last 25 years, the student membership of Scotland County Schools has dropped from 7,200 children to 5,347. We've lost 1,853 children over the last 25 years. Now, that's not just citizens we've lost, children we've lost, revenue for the county we've lost, it's revenue for the school district that we've lost. Because those 1,853 children represent hundreds of thousands, not millions of dollars in state federal funding that the district no longer receives. Okay, next one. So proposed budget for 23-24, allotments. Obviously, there's not 24 classroom teachers. That's supposed to be 245. Clerical error, I left the 5 off. So we are anticipating that we will have regular classroom teachers in our 10 schools next year of 245 teachers. Program enhancement teachers, 12.9. Those are things like your specialists, your art, your music, specialty programs like that. We call those specials. We'll have about 12.9 teachers in our 10 schools in the specialty area. Then we have exceptional children, teacher assistants, job coaches, program specialists. They round out the numbers of other positions that we have in the school district. Okay, next slide. So here's the budget. This is the proposed budget. State budget, we are estimating this year was $48,303,923. Next year, we're projecting or anticipating we'll receive $48,340,164, and that's 36,000 more. The additional 36,000 is because, as you saw, we have a few more children. So those few more children would generate a little bit more money from the state. Local, that's the 10-1 that we received this year. Now, the reason it's above the 10 that we talk about is because we've lumped into that category all other local sales tax, fines and forfeitures, all other things that come to the school district locally. We put all the local money in that we receive from the county. So,
But that sales tax is a lot more than that, isn't it?
Sales tax refund.
refund.
The sales tax, the restricted for sales tax is not a revenue to them. That's the sales tax that they spend and they.
So that's where the
And we can read.
150 will.
Yeah.
is coming in.
Okay. 150 represents fines and forfeitures, and then there's an $85,000 increase. All other local revenues are down there on special revenue. You have to do that again based upon the state statute, so you don't sales tax, pre-K expenditures, you have ROTC reimbursement, all those go in. And the reason there's a different, you have to differentiate those is because if you did have a large charter school population, that's how they determine which resources go to the charter schools. And right now, it's only county appropriation and class 4. So you separate your other revenues in those special revenues. But that's in the 3.1.
So that's why that's a little more than 10 million. And the difference here, something else that's in that number that bumps it up to 10,235,898 from the 10,150 we got this year. The 85,898 is a request. That 85,000 is a request for a little more local current expense money. Now, again, current expense is what we spend each and every day just to run the schools. So that's an ask. That's 85,898 additional dollars that we're asking to help us with the increased cost and reduction of money we're receiving. Here's the big hit, federal. This year we had 32,162,583. That's what we received from the federal government. ESSER's in that, the ESSER dollars. Next year from the feds, we will receive 20,995,267.62. Again, that's projected. Could be a little higher, could be a little lower. That's projected. That's a difference of 11,167,315. That's the ESSER cliff. When you hear public agencies, school districts talk about the ESSER cliff, that's it. That money's going away. It's not being cut. It's not being reduced. This was special funding because of COVID. It's just ended. It's ended. So school districts won't have that money to use 23, 24. Capital outlay. Here's one. All the money that goes in the capital outlay, the county appropriates 300,000 capital outlay, but we're looking at everything that we put in the capital outlay from the county. And it all totals, this year totaled up to about $1,038,000. We are proposing next year that it will be $939,135. That's a drop of $99,000. And again, Aaron, if you could help me explain why it's $99,000 less, that's debt. Some of that is the debt adjustment on the South Johnson Elementary. And some of it is bond. We got some bond revenue last year that we're not getting this year.
Apologize, I haven't had the fortune to meet the finance officer, but the finance officer of the county has been very responsive to providing the debt service information. But last year, you all had additional resources, some bond and note proceeds. You funded $353,000 above your sales tax and above the $300,000 allocation. That $353 is going away. The district is paying right at $500,000, $495,000 they're using of their local funds to make this $2.1 million payment. So within this court request, even though you're seeing the overall program go down, there's an ask of a $254,000 increase in order to make that $2.1 million payment. The district still would use all of its lottery funds, use its $300,000 of county appropriations, and then fund it with that $495,000 of local funds. There'll be more detail when that comes up.
Well, I guess it was. I thought it was right over the next slide. That's why I asked you to flip it ahead, but it's further over. So the local budget, let's go back to the state budget, if you would, sir. So this is what we're looking for from the state. Total state money, we're anticipating $48,340,164. That's an increase of $36,241. That's state money. The lion's share of the money to run any school district in this state comes from the state. Next, we're looking at the local budget. That's what we're asking for local, an additional $85,898 for current expense. You see there, we have the county appropriation of new requests, and then the fines and forfeitures split in there, as Aaron was pointing out, $150,000 for a total of, it would be a total of $10,235,898 would be the county appropriation of the school district. The next slide. Federal funds, we've already talked about the cliff. The loss of the $11,167,315.60. That money is going away. And this is the slide that he was speaking to that I wanted to take a minute and talk to you about. So if you bear with me, I'm almost finished. If you bear with me for one more minute.
Did we just get that 11 million for 1 year?
Oh, no, sir, we had that for two years.
They come in different allocations. A large part of it expires this September 23, and then the final part of ESSER has to be obligated by September 24.
So,
Total about 30 million.
so they came in two, like, ESSER one, ESSER two.
That's a three, it came in three
Yeah.
chunks, that's a one, that's a two, that's a three. One and two are gone, we still have a little three that we have until 24 to utilize. Good question.
So that'll go down again next year.
It'll drop again, our federal funds will drop again. Yes, sir. And all that's why we're gonna be very vigilant this year. I will go, school districts, everybody, and my goal has always been to set a good budget and spend that money on the children. That's why you ask for the loan, that's why you seek the grants, you get the federal, the local money to help the kids. A goal, a priority we will have with our budget this year will be rebuild our fund balance. Try to save as much money as we can save.
This may not be the right time to ask, but I guess my question would be, you've had ESSER funds to spend, and I think obviously it was restricted on what you could spend it on. Are there services that it allowed you to provide that you're gonna want to continue after you no longer have ESSER funds available?
That's a great question, a great question. Yes, sir, there are. And whether or not we're gonna be able to do that will depend upon the strength and the health of our budget. Some of those would be, our schools have, I'm gonna drill down now, get a little granular. Some of those things that we've done, we have 11 school nurses. Everywhere I've served, we haven't had a nurse in every school. We have a nurse in every school in Scotland County. That's excellent. Usually one nurse is serving multiple schools. We have one in every one. We have mental health personnel in our schools. This is something that school districts will have to start, not just because of the federal resources that allow us to do it now, because of all the problems we're having in society, and the violence in the kids, and the social emotional instability of our children today. Social emotional instability of our society. It's not just children, it's adults too. So we're going to have to put mental health people. We place mental health people in our schools to work with and counsel our children. We have more social workers than most school districts have. Again, I think you're aware of the poverty level of our district. And because of that, we've identified those areas. Nurses, for health and medical services, social workers, to help mitigate some of the social problems that our children have, and mental health people. We would like to continue all of those services. They're all in the budget for next year, for 23-24. Whether we can going forward will depend on how well we're able to manage our money and what other resources we can have. That's an excellent question, though. Excellent.
I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. So the capital outlay budget, the public school capital fund, we got 385 last year, and we're anticipating proposed next year 385, the same amount, no difference. The South Johnson Elementary School lease. This year, we utilized 653,142 from school funds to pay down the lease or pay on the lease. We're proposing 554,135, $99,000 difference. But now we're going to come back to that. Hold that thought about the $99,000 difference. So total expenditure for capital, again, you saw that number under the local budget, will decrease from $1,038,142 to $939,135, a difference of $99,000. The revenue, public school funds, the lottery funds, we hope to receive the same amount. Are people going to gamble more next year than this year? I don't know. But this year we got $385,000 for lottery, and we projected $385,000 for lottery next year. No difference. County appropriation, you give us $300,000 for capital outlay, and we're anticipating $300,000 next year. Here's some new money: $254,135 for capital, That request for capital will go to offset the debt service with South Johnson Elementary School. And let me right here stop and talk about that. In your packet, you have the 20-year debt service model for South Johnson. I provided it for you. Some of you were commissioners when this deal was struck, some of you were not. In essence, what this amounts to is that under 2 superintendents ago, the agreement was reached between the board and the commissioners that the South Johnson School project would be paid out of school funds for the 20 years of the pay down. As you can see, almost every year for the 20 years, it's right at 2 million. Some years it's 2.1. I think the most it is in a year is 2.1, and the least it is in a year is about 1.2. Now, this is what's happening. The school district is taking money out of its current expense. You saw that where on the slide, what happened to the fund balance. The school district is taking money from its current expense budget every year to pay the debt service. We're using current expense dollars to pay capital outlay needs, to pay the debt service on South Johnson. So in essence, the bottom line, this is just the fact of the matter. We are not utilizing the 10 million that you give us for current expense every year for current expense. We're using 7.9 because 2.1 of it is rolling into debt service. So we don't have 10 million to spend on the services, staff, resources, supplies, materials for the school district. We have 7.9.
But can I, while we're on that topic, and I want to go back to 2018, I think it was, when the discussions of this was going on and how it was going to be taken care of. And in our liaison committee, we never really got it. I can't say we didn't get an answer, but the promise that was made to the board, and I think there's only 2 people sitting here that was on the board.
I remember.
That was the day before my first election. But anyway, when it was passed. But the promise that was made from the schools, and I'm going to lump everybody into that, the school board, the superintendent, the whoever, is that don't worry about it. It'll pay for itself. We'll pay for it out of savings of the closing of the other schools and not having to maintain them, and there was going to be like an 80-person drop in the employment, and goes on and on. And the last number that when we asked in the liaison, what was that? What's the number that we saved? And the answer has been 0. So it's hard for us to go back to taxpayers and say, I know you were promised this, it'll pay for itself, and that's the word that was used at the time, it'll pay for itself. And now we're saying, oh, no, none of that attrition happened, none of that savings was realized. I know you're new to, and that is 2 superintendents ago, so I don't want to, but I'm just kind of giving you what, we hear on that.
And you're right on the mark. You are right. When I asked about why this was set up like that,
That's
the board shared that with me. The board shared that. Yes, sir.
If the board convinced me that to support consolidating the schools, that the savings on energy and staff would overpay for it. But another question I have, the consolidation of, this was before you came, of South Scotland and Johnson. My question is, now that they're on the same campus, do we still have 2 nurses on that?
No, sir. I'm looking at Mr. Chapman.
No, sir.
No, we
No,
don't.
sir.
We one nurse for that campus.
We have told that 1 AP, 1 nurse, 1 mental health,
One bookkeeper.
1 bookkeeper. We have made those adjustments. on
Let
that.
me ask this though, on that same, what about Sycamore? Do they have 1 or 2? Because Sycamore is primary and elementary.
Correct.
Do they have 1? I'm talking about nurse. I know they have administration separate. What about the nursing?
They share a nurse.
They do share, okay.
Yes.
And that's good.
And
they share a nurse, they share a social worker, they share, nurse, social worker, they share cafeteria staff.
Then we have one cap at the law here.
So
Who share?
Not that middle and elementary school.
Yeah, the Laurel Hill, I mean, we moved some Peg Garden kids to Laurel Hill as well.
Oh, yeah, that's
They share as well.
consolidating schools, we still got the same number of teachers. After consolidating schools.
Probably our teachers have decreased, I would imagine, because
What I would say, I'm sorry, what I would say to, teacher allotments. Teacher allotments are based on, your ADM, your average daily membership. As the school district has gotten smaller, the allotment has shrunk. And in the consolidation, there have been positions that have been eliminated through attrition. As people have decided to retire, as people have decided to move to a different district or move to another career, those positions ended up being folded in to meet the enrollment standards that the state set. One of the outliers to that, I would say, is the high school. And this dates back 25 years and it's nationwide. When high schools go to semester scheduling, under block scheduling, it increases the number of opportunities students have to take classes. But the state funding formula for instructional staff is still based on a 6-period year-long day. So anytime a high school, and this is again nationwide, anytime a high school adds staff, that has to come out of local dollars to expand those programs. Now, it's supplemented through the federal career and tech ed grants and funding. But it's not just about career and technical education. It's also about JROTC. It's about your fine arts teachers. It's about health and physical education teachers, so on and so forth. That's the offset. But in the K-8 schools, we've dwindled down based on student enrollment, based on state enrollment and allotment figures. I hope that explains it, but there's a balance there between what instructional positions have to be paid for out of state versus what has to be paid out of the course of investment.
we just didn't roll those positions forward and take them out of local. We started to call them back as the funding was called back. I want to ask Mr. Bouyer if he will, Chairman Ivey, he has a little more in-depth information about that very question, that the points.
Okay, and let me just add a caveat to that, and I think this is more than Kevin. Because we're talking and we're calling it the South Johnson lease. But there's more money there's more than just that, right? There's more debt payment that we currently pay that is that South Johnson piece.
Well, this is,
I want to say another $15 million.
yeah, the total debt service payment, because there's the South Johnson and then there's the wing expansions. Both of those go into it. And we have the debt service for both of those, and then we have the restricted sales taxes that the county receives, and that's a direct allocation to both of those lease payments.
But the 2.1 million is not covering, it's just covering the South Johnson portion. It's not covering that other $15 million that we're currently paying, right? Is that making sense?
I'm trying to get. I'm trying to catch up with you.
You're right.
Where's that 15 million? What is it paying?
Who's paying the 15
We get
million?
additions at Sycamore and Laurel Hill.
That's that 15 million.
I'm just trying to say, is that separated in
Our total debt payment for next year for the schools is $3,484,000.
so we're paying $3.5 million for the debt service to the schools. 2 million of it is what's coming back from a lease of South Johnson, but we're still paying another $2 million or whatever you have for, that wasn't for you, that was for us.
Well, that helps. I didn't know that.
Okay.
That helps. I wasn't aware of
It's
that.
all about the jail, Hanson classroom, and then Sycamore Lane. We added on quite a bit.
When they consolidated, they built a new school, they added wings to 2 other schools. And there were 2 different loans.
So the county has other debt service that is in addition to.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Just
Here's a little additional information about that.
Just a couple quick points of clarification. The column you're looking at with that proposed capital budget, we rushed to get this together yesterday. Mr. Logan asked for some, but really that difference column is not correct. But it's just adding up where that revenue is coming from. A little bit of a misstatement, and I'll preface that by saying I only had the fortune of working with Mr. Logan for the 2 months he's been here, but I can tell you, he's rolling up his sleeves, diving into a very, very difficult situation. You all have not really had the financial management you should have had. Now, I've got 30 plus years. I've worked in 2 districts. I worked in a low wealth district for 20 plus years. I worked in one of the more wealthier districts in the state. But again, there really, in the 3-4 years in the past, there really hasn't been a transparent public school budget. Because everyone, commissioners included, as you all make decisions, programs, staffing, people, you have to know what it's funding, and that your 10 million is a huge part of that, your additional resources. On the capital, before I go on, you are dedicating part of your Article 40 and 42 sales tax to pay that debt. Not that whole 2.1 isn't coming out of your entire $10 million appropriation. Only about $500,000 are you sacrificing locally. But when you add up your lottery proceeds, your restricted sales tax, and then the new money request, that all adds up to trying to take that 2.1. But just as you were saying, the county, like every other county, is retiring the debt across the board, the $3.5 million from their sales tax. And then this is the balance that's being used for that. I'll speak to the gentleman's question here, and I'll call it. Multiple times I've been in districts where people have stood up and said consolidating the schools is going to save money. It saves very little. You save property tax, you save a little bit of clerical that's paid locally, but the students are funded by the state. So your students and your teacher cost really is not a saving to the district. So it's really minimal when you close a facility. You do reduce some electrical costs, you do reduce some overhead and some maintenance things down the road, but true dollars matching inflation and increased fixed costs going on simultaneously, it's normally a wash.
So in other words, they should go back to that consulting firm that they paid a couple $100,000 and said that's what would happen and get them the money back.
Exactly.
Because basically, we were lied to.
That's right.
Yeah, I was on that,
We were,
I'm the house representing the board, and,
And
sold me
we're
on
not.
that.
I know. Yeah, no,
This is
no,
not saying before your time, it was before my time. I mean, but, I vividly remember that.
that was the selling point.
And that, as you're hearing now,
Yes.
it's just not accurate. It's been my experience as I've built schools, closed schools, consolidated schools, and I've done a lot of that. As Mr. Beaulieu is saying, I always mess your name up. Beaulieu, as Mr. Beaulieu is saying, typically there's very little savings in consolidation.
And I'm not trying to defend what decisions were made, but some of what they offered were, you're gonna be housing people in less buildings, and there's some economy to having, 4 first grades instead of having 25 kids in a smaller school. You have to have 2 first grade classes, and each of them have 13 kids in it. And so the reduction, it was gonna be some proposed reduction in staff. And what I also think I'm hearing is that with some of that savings, some of those money were being used, either social workers, nurses, other personnel in the schools, to make the service better. But I think that somewhere along the line, people making the decisions on what to do with that extra money that might have come from some of those savings weren't applied toward debt service, were applied toward other resources.
It didn't happen.
And again, I would know, there's things that change, we all know, it's constantly changing, but the state oftentimes dips its hands into your pockets with putting mandates down that require, so someone could have easily stood up previously when the class size mandates weren't in place, but now that they have all the class size requirements that have come down over the last 4 or 5 years, then some of those things may have been bundled into, you can only have 17 kids now.
That is exactly what happened.
So,
Within a year after this thing.
right, right, so there's different things, and as Mr. Logan was looking at me, and we all try to monitor the legislation, the state budget, but we often know their decisions oftentimes impact local budgets drastically. And you all are left trying to put those pieces together.
Thank you, sir. So, let me sum that up. What the basic selling point for the consolidation was not a sound.
It was not what?
Sound one.
Yeah, absolutely right.
There are some savings, but not to the tune of this kind of money that you could use to offset the cost of the school. Because as Aaron has pointed out, and it's been my experience, when you consolidate, it's basically, as he said, a wash. It's basically a wash.
Somebody write that down.
So what, and I can back that up with facts. So it's statistics. So what happens, or what has happened then, now the school district is attempting to pay this debt service every year, and it's placing a huge strain on the local current expense budget of the district. And the other impact, we're rolling all of the capital outlay that you're giving us, the capital to maintain the schools during the year. We're rolling all of that into that too. So we're not putting any money into the maintenance of the schools every year. I'm going to, in a moment, ask Mr. Chapman to share with you all the projects that we are grant funded. Most of our major capital projects this year are grant funded, not most, all are grant funded. We're not using any resources from anywhere else to do anything except grants. And again, the district has been very successful.
And some ESSER money.
And some ESSER, we are using some ESSER funding for that. But over the course of 20 years, we can't go 20 years without maintaining our schools with some local capital outlay money, or the schools will look like, they'll look very bad in a very short period of time. Children are very hard on school buildings. And if we don't do certain maintenance to those schools each and every year, paint, redo floors, repair roofs, et cetera, then the school buildings are gonna be in dire straits very shortly. So that's one of those things, it's less expensive to sort of do a little as you go, rather than wait until the building is falling down. So, and I am asking for, the request is for an additional $254,135 for capital outlay, not current expense, capital outlay that will be used down here for against the South Johnson lease payment. That would consist of the county appropriation of $300,000. You give us the capital now. The new money requested of $254, all of our lottery proceeds $385, our restricted sales tax $750, and special revenue fund 8. And if you go 1 forward, I'll show you what's in fund 8. Well, that's the child nutrition. Well, I thought, oh, I'm sorry, go back, please. Just one.
It's one more. It's after 5.
Back one more.
Yeah.
Oh, it's after child nutrition. Okay, let's hit child nutrition. And then I'll show you what's in Fund 8, in case you're wondering, well, what's the Fund 8? That's a place where we're putting revenues to try to protect that revenue so it can be used against the debt service. We're protecting it, we're safeguarding it. We're putting it over there so it doesn't get spent in other ways. Before I get to that, I want to give you a very bright spot here. Our child nutrition program, what we have found, there's 2 programs in our district that are extremely well managed, child nutrition and federal programs. Our federal budget over the years has been very well managed under the tutelage of Ms. Barbara Adams, and our child nutrition program under Mr. Jacobs has been very well managed. You may know this. I didn't know this until I arrived here. Scotland County has a 100% CEP district. In other words, All of our children receive free and reduced lunch and breakfast. None of our children pay. Federal budget, federal government pays for breakfast and lunch for all of our children in school. What does that mean? That's probably $250,000 savings to our parents every year, that they're not having to pay for breakfast and lunch. And the district, that saves another $45,000, where we aren't chasing down delinquent funds for child nutrition funds. Tip of the hat to our child nutrition program for doing the necessary due diligence to see to it that the district receives that status. And we have that, it's time to renew that for another,
Yes, sir. It just went in for renewal.
so that we continue to receive free and reduced lunch for all of our children. That's a big perk for the school district. I want to thank the child nutrition program. If we could go, so this is the special fund. This is Fund 8. Up top, you see the source of the fund, and down at the bottom, the revenue. And these are areas where we are pulling dollars to put in Fund 8 so we can come up with the necessary money, save, protect, reserve the necessary money to handle the fund balance. So classroom teachers, this past year out of 01, we were using some 01 money, $343,540 that was designated for teachers. We were using it for other purposes. So that's out. That 01 will be used for teachers. That's the difference of $343,540 that we pulled out. Our WIOA grant, and WIOA, I looked it up, I know what it stands for, because I didn't know what it stood for either. So in case you're wondering, what is WIOA? That is, just a moment, let me go back and find that. That's another one that's sort of unique. Everybody doesn't have WIOA, but that is a special grant. It's an innovation grant that our district receives. And it is an annual type of grant. What is that? Here it is. It's the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Grant. So we receive that every year. Well, not every year, but we get $45,000. We'll have it next year, $45,000 for that. No increase or difference. Exceptional Children Medicaid. Now, you said, why is that dropping 464,892? That's a projection. That's a prediction. This is, we can file Medicaid reimbursement on some of our exceptional children. Because of their nature, of their disabilities, we can actually file to Medicaid and get money reimbursed from that. So this year we got $764,892.50. Next year, we've only estimated we'll get $300,000 back. We may get more. That number may go up. In all transparency, it may be more than $300,000. It could be $500,000. It could be $400,000. Indian Education Grant, that remains, well, we got $100,000 more. I mean, $100 more. Pre-K, no change in our pre-K money. After school care, $3,000 to $30,000. Let me explain what after school care is. The school district doesn't run an after school care program. The school district runs a service to our educators where they pay, teachers, other employees pay out of their pocket for their children to have an after school place at the school until they finish their work assignment and they take their children home. The school district is simply a flow through. That's all that is. We collect that payment from the teachers and we use it to pay the staff that's taking care of the children. That's a service to staff. That's not a public after school care. Teacher of the Year. I wish we did have $90,000 to use for Teacher of the Year. There's a salary in there. Our thank you. Our public information officer is paid out of that line item. So that's a whole person in there. We spend about $9,000 on our Teacher of the Year. The other 81 is for a salary and benefits. The South Johnson lease payment, $495,946. That's what we took out from last year's budget. We're anticipating again this year. And then you drop to the bottom and you see where we pulled the revenues in for those Fund 8 areas. State pre-K, sales and usage tax, revenues from federal sources, other local revenue, and indirect costs is what helps to make up the money in Fund 8. And it's down $781,332 because at the top, the difference of teachers were dropping and the difference in Medicare. When you pull those two differences out, it dropped 781,332. But we will use that Fund 8 money to help offset the debt service on Job Johnson. I believe
Make one quick point. Mr. Logan already spoke about the ESSER cliff, but you're able to charge back indirect costs for what you spend in those federal programs. So as that amount of money becomes less, you can see this year went from 800 to 400. Previous years it'll probably be more like $50,000 because you won't be spending that $20 million of ESSER funds you have remaining. So you're losing some revenue because you're spending down that federal money, and that's part of that ESSER cliff.
sorry it took so long.
It's all right.
I wanted you to have,
I think my question boils down to one question, because I'm a little confused. When you talked about $10 million earlier, there's $150,000 in there, wherever that came from. And you'd mentioned earlier, basically, it was an $85,000 increase
in current
in our current year. So that's the number you're looking for, is the 85,000.
And 240.
and 240.
254.
254.
And 250.
The 85
85 is current.
is current expense, what we use to run the district on a day-to-day, and the 254 is just for capital outlay. And it's not for the maintenance of the
I was gonna
school.
ask you that. It's
No,
gonna go that way, sir.
it's gonna go to debt service.
So 330,000
Is the total.
is the total.
But we still don't have funds to maintain the school.
Let's talk about,
Or, I mean, we do through grant funding, but not
not on
the
a,
traditional maintenance.
not traditional, yes, sir, exactly. And before we move away, oh, excuse me, go ahead.
So that's all right, the 10, so that would put us at 10,330, I'm hearing right, then I'm rounding that. Plus the 300 capital that we're already agreed.
GNC.
Am I
10-6.
following?
Yeah, no, that's correct.
That's what they're requesting.
That's what we're requesting.
The chart you just, the special revenue fund, that you just went over, you had a reduction of $464,000 for the exceptional children Medicaid. Is that ESSER money? I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, like Medicaid fee for service, direct service, but it was actually, it was incorrectly budgeted. So they were receiving that like on an annual basis.
So that's, okay. That's why you're not expecting that to be, okay.
May come in, some additional may come in, but not to the tune of the.
Exactly. Good question. Back to the annual maintenance of the schools, Mr. Chapman, if you would share with the commissioners what we are doing through grants, and this is what's exceptional, gentlemen.
Good morning. Every 5 years, school districts employ a firm to go through and do a 5-year facility study. And what it does is it gives you an essence of planning out needed maintenance and upgrades for your campuses across the district over the next 5 years. Much of it is based on life expectancy of machinery or equipment. Other parts of it are routine maintenance features or special maintenance features due to the construction of the buildings. And I'll give you an example. In year 1, we are projected to spend on covered walkways for one facility, a parking lot paved for another facility, HVAC equipment for the central office and the alternative school, so on and so forth. Now, there's some smaller line items in there, like replacing carpet at one of the schools with tile, and I'll come back to that in a minute. Because of the situation with the debt service, what we have found we needed to do, number one, my best friend right now is ESSER 3. I'm just gonna say it out loud. ESSER 3 has a line item in there in that grant that I'm allowed to use for HVAC equipment. Now, I'm not sure if anybody in the room has had to replace their heat pump lately, but I replaced mine at my home recently. It lasted all 15 years, and that was 10 grand right out the door that month. That's just for a house. There are HVAC situations at the different schools that are much more complex. We're talking about the replacement of cooling towers. We're talking about the replacement of water source heat pumps. so on and so forth.
Have we got any schools that's over that age, 15 years old, other than high school?
So
Most of the schools are new.
let me,
I
let me
mean, how
give
much
you this.
maintenance we gonna need on new schools?
Let me give you this example. Carver and Spring Hill were built in '83. Believe it or not, that's 40 years old. The water source heat pumps in those facilities need to be replaced.
Is that the best way to do it? I think we're gonna get into a different discussion right now, but I think anyway, 83, are you not?
Yeah, it's 83.
It's not.
My eighth grade year, they would be.
Not Carver's review.
Spring, Sycamore Lane.
Yes, it's like that.
Sycamore
Okay,
Lane,
now
not
Carver and
Lane.
Spring Hill were built 2 years later, according to the facilities.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
No,
I
Carver
don't think
Spring
so.
Hill were built nineties, in the late nineties.
Yeah, I'm thinking
I
of
was in
Sycamore Lane.
I was in
Sycamore Lane.
83.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just.
All right, well, let's just go with that argument. We're still over 20 years. And infrastructure does not last 20 years without systems breaking down, replacement parts, so on and so forth. Okay, we have had multiple situations, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use Shaw as an example. As a facility, Shaw has 3 oil-fired boilers on campus. They were oil-fired because there's no infrastructure out there for natural gas pipeline. Electrical was too expensive at the time. So the designers of Shaw went with buried diesel fuel tanks and oil-fired boilers. They have run their course. That campus is very old. We can't get oil-fired boilers anymore. In essence, for public facilities, oil-fired boilers have basically been done away with. They've been outlawed just because of current ecological considerations. Well, in those areas, when you're trying to retrofit, you're confined to the physical space. You can't get individual propane boilers or any other type of heating element in there in that confined space the way it was designed. Because we tried. We tried ripping out the diesel tanks and putting in propane tanks out there, propane fired boilers, just like we did at Sycamore Lane, because we knew it would be more energy efficient. And it's just not possible. The physical aspect of that campus is not possible. We've continued exploring other options. But what used to be projected at a $200,000 upgrade to the HVAC out there is projected now at over 900. Should we pursue it? Because of the design of the facility and because of the restrictions on equipment nowadays.
How many people that show?
Right now, we have an enrollment of about 80.
How old is that shop? That's old.
19,
I know it's old. How old is it?
1954, I believe.
Okay, how old is Sycamore Lane?
Sycamore Good Lady 3.
The first part of it.
Yeah, the first
The
part.
first part was
Somewhere around each.
Some of the schools that we consolidated, did we not use one of those schools instead of using Charlotte that was so old?
Well, there's a reason for using Shaw versus. Well, location is one thing, about step out of
Correct.
bounds. Location
No,
is
go ahead. I'm
alternative
not
school,
aware.
you don't want it, they thought about North. You don't want a school where kids can just walk off campus with alternative schools, so you're trying to deter.
But this thing you could do either with the both of them, so.
Yeah, they go.
Shaw was the best
I'm
location.
just talking at the time, I mean, that,
Yeah.
if we knew that school was that old and that bad a shape, because I know it's old, I know it's bad shape.
It
We
provides-
brought that up just right where Carol got off, and I think they when we looked at it and they said the upfitting even for like Sycamore Lane, no, South Stockton was gonna be too much.
Well, you give them a gym, you got high school students there as well. On the other place would have been IEJ.
that was no problem. And that's just one example. But going back to the idea of Laurel Hill, Spring Hill, and Carver, the water source heat pump project, there's over 30 of them in the mezzanines that pump hot water system through for heating and cooling. Those are projected, now this is in $1,999, or not 99, $2,019 prior to COVID. It was projected at 500,000 per campus. Now, since COVID, we've had supply chain issues, we've had inflation, we've had a lack of a workforce. The sheer number of contractors that are available to do these kinds of projects has dwindled significantly. Our one best option to get these projects done is through the ESSER line item for HVAC, and that's what we're using. Even though it was projected for years 4 and 5, I've accelerated that timeline so I can encumber the funds from ESSER to take out the biggest expenditures from the facility upgrades. Because I have to have it encumbered by the end of next year. If I don't, I lose that opportunity.
And then they have to be spent by 26?
Correct. And so that also means getting contracts done, having contractors on the timeline, and having the equipment delivered. And currently, HVAC equipment, because there's only certain manufacturers available, you're looking at 12 to 18 month lead time. It took 12 months for the new chiller at Scotland High School in buildings 2 and 3 to be built and delivered.
It seemed like this time last year they had a temporary one out there or something.
That's correct. That's correct. And I could give more information about that project, but
Well, I mean, I think here at the end of just a matter of time, not trying to rush you out of this, but, you know, the number they want to hear was that
Yes.
1060 basically.
Yes, sir.
Which will be part of our discussion later on.
Chairman,
Go ahead.
I did want him to also share, we do have some other projects that from other grant sources. Quickly, Mr. Chairman,
yes,
just
sir.
roll
So-
through those.
The district received 2 grants from North Carolina DPI, needs-based facility upgrade grants. One is for the high school auditorium. We received just over $1 million. That, again, was based on 2019 figures, but we are being good stewards about it, negotiating contracts, making sure costs are staying down. That project is taking off next week. We are also receiving needs-based capital outlay grants for covered walkways and paving projects at 6 of our schools. Shaw is getting the parking lot they've never had. Sycamore Lane is getting an additional parking lot. Covered walkways are being installed at Sycamore, Laurel Hill, Carver, Spring Hill, and Wagram to shield the students from the elements while they're waiting for cars or for buses, so on and so forth. If we did not have those grants, that's $2 million in expenditures that we would not be able to deal with. The auditorium retrofit, which was badly needed 3 years ago, is finally coming into fruition, but with inflation, we've had to adjust the project to stay within the grant funding. And then we've also done playgrounds and seating at the schools through ESSER as well. But these additional funds are not permanent. Once the projects are done, and I've already saved in the playground equipment, I've already saved $38,000. I've saved another $120,000 from paving. But whatever I save in that grant, I don't get to keep. I only get to spend it on those projects. So whatever I save, I'm saving in essence for the state. I don't get to attach it to a new project. And that's what some of the downfall is to these.
And in fact, today, I've already discussed with the county manager, we need your signature, Mr. Chairman, and the board chairman's signature to move forward. The way these grants work, the money comes from the state, they flow through the county. So the county commissioner chair and the school board chair co-sign the paperwork. It goes back to the state, and then the money will be released. And we hope to get started on the high school, finishing the auditorium Monday.
Just make sure Jason has it, he'll make sure I do it.
Okay, because we have the asbestos abatement paperwork ready to go today, and that, we came in under budget on that.
We've taken up more of your time than we had planned to. I actually said to Chairman Singletary, I can go over it in 20 minutes. So thank you for your patience. Your questions were excellent. We need a little extra money, gentlemen. I'm a short termer. I was doing, Price is Right, let's make a deal, 2 cups of coffee every morning, and I got a phone call, and here I am. I'm enjoying the work. There's a lot going on in schools today. There's a lot happening. You see it on the news every day, I read it every day. And we are addressing those things as they happen in our community. We're mourning the loss of a couple of students now, young men. Those are the types of things, mental health, social workers, counselors, that we need to structure our schools so that we have an opportunity to intervene, to prevent these types of things from happening before the youngsters make bad decisions.
Do we know, I know this is a little off topic here, but I think we talked about it earlier, but do we know a number of how many students we're losing to private schools right here in the county?
That came up just last week.
Yeah.
We're talking about doing a survey to find out. I shared with you House Bill 406. That bill has the potential of pulling, in every school district, hundreds of children out that would go elsewhere, private charter programs that would go other places. We're talking about doing a survey to see how many parents would consider alternative educational settings to the public school setting if that bill passes, if things like that happens. At this point, I can't give you a number. It's not high. Right now, we don't have a lot of children in other educational settings. Could that change if that voucher program becomes law? Yes, sir, it could. It could. It could hit not just Scotland, any school district could greatly be impacted by that. So I might be able to have something for you in June after we have a chance to do a survey with our community.
Yeah, I want to say something to Robert. I'm going to be for 45 minutes, I'll be right back. Okay, Robert?
Uh-huh.
I've been receiving budgets for the past 20 years sitting right here. This is the first time we had a real budget that we could understand. There's no ambiguity. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Be
that.
right back.
And again, my goal was always transparency. I've had great relationships. Well, again, I've had the opportunity to ask for money and to give money. So I understand the responsibility and the.
Well, I'd like to do a fine job also.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Do you have that,
I'll leave these here. That's the matter. If you like those, other people could have a copy of them. Everyone have a great day.
Mr. Sampson, how long do you think you No, I'm wondering about a break.
About please.
You want to take a break? So let's take about a 10-minute break. Come back at 10:35. What? Oh, I thought
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. You're not left.
Morning.
How are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
and Jack told you you could be out of here by 9:30.
We're fine. Not a problem.
I'm gonna send all my work to Jack.
I'll take it.
No, they don't exist.
Hey, you're only gonna get 10 minutes, so you might want to stand up.
I'll take a look at Oh.
I'm gonna shuffle around it. I think that corner may not be as cold.
Get my coat.
Feels wonderful.
And it was the best presentation ever. That was good.
Well, that was actually useful.
Yeah. You know, it was actually understandable.
I was gonna say, actually, made sense.
Where you gonna put all that?
Hey, so to sit down to the bar, right?
What is this, what is this way off there? Right there on the top. And then here's
But I wasn't sleeping, I was like, I just stay up.
Do I need to date? Right here.
Is that,
Important stuff in here.
is that, excuse me. Hey, you just, never mind, I won't have to run over there. You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you, sir. All right, appreciate
Some language.
That's why I wanted to bring up that other part of that.
Yeah.
They haven't known in a while. Always been at least that, yeah.
Well, it's been that long since I had a finance officer.
Yeah.
And then they decided, she's not, we're not gonna hire you. And she left.
Oh, yes, you kept calling me. I was like,
They actually told me about that thing. Which one? The one on the airport that had to be actually done to the town of Maxton in the city of Warrenville.
I went and signed one last week.
Last week? Okay.
I think it was like,
Yeah, I see. I thought there was some of the tax foreclosure did, but anyway.
Go ahead and get that
Oh, you did? Okay.
that's what you told me. I don't read them, I just
Okay.
sign them.
Well, here's the thing. We did one to the airport. The deed was not supposed to be the airport. They instructed us to do that, but Jerry Bruno represents the entity, says it's supposed to be the town of Maxton. the city of Warrenville. So we haven't signed that one. But you want to take us out?
Well, like I said, I was over there last week to do,
Okay.
to sign something. And she said it was our.
All right.
If she needs me to come back over, tell her to get out.
Well, it's not to the airport anymore. It's got to be the city of Warrenville and the town of Maxton.
Okay.
Jerry Bruno says that's the way they whole title, you know.
Well, I'm sure he told me to do it. Don't listen to Marcus. But if you need me to sign, just let me know. I'll be around. I'll be there. You're welcome. By the way, you're free. The fee structure changes, there's some big changes there.
That's fine.
And there's not much.
I didn't see nothing that any people would ask much about anyway.
And I'll show you how y'all can open it up and get more detail than you ever want to know.
We're doing that.
No. That more often than later, it's scary.
Unless you did it the last month, I wasn't.
If you not, if you not, we'll have to get up with it.
Yeah, that's fine. That's what, well, we're gonna do it close.
I'm talking about
Oh, I don't think that dramatic.
change.
This
Well, good. Yes,
Sam's
sir.
a guy,
Everything
so
going well?
it's probably
It
going
is.
forever.
Mr. Chairman, all I need to do is this right here. I'll know what that means.
I tried to do, I tried to do that with the superintendent, we didn't take it.
Miss Kelly still UNCP? Yeah, she is. I'm retired. I saw you today. She always wants to keep up with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stand up when I see her.
I was telling that joke about Carly. I've told this joke about Carly several times with him there. And I take my grandbaby to go see Carly preach. Carly preach, he'd be preaching, he'd just be walking. Preaching, he'd look at his watch. Finally, grandbaby says, why did the preacher, what does it mean when the preacher looks at his watch? I said, nothing.
My wife and everything else. Yeah.
Well, I asked him to tell him to please knock it down or bump it up a degree or two.
You're gonna be cool looking down there.
I said, look, I
All right, 2 minutes and we'll come back again.
I couldn't remember the year. Look at that.
Oh, yeah, where's that? You got
A minute and a half.
Okay, I'm coming.
That was with him.
We got in this morning.
I got one with his work, it was.
Well, I guarantee you.
Oh.
I will say that, I guess, now 5 school budget presentations that I've been in on, that was the best.
Well, let me say this by far the most honor. From both sides have been being over there, the best I've ever been. And most of them. So, the others will feel with so much ambiguity.
You know what, sometimes to do finance officer, so hopefully certified finance.
She is getting older.
I know you have.
Yeah.
I was gonna say she was an assistant, and she was the finance director.
She's,
That's what we need. That's the biggest, that's the
because you have been something wrong. Yeah. Keep her. So I think we can keep her. The others are lost because of her talk.
Was that, was he here, or did he just?
No, he was at high school as an 8-year-old.
Okay.
And she moved him from here to.
Okay.
When what's the name? Ball.
His presentation was.
No, Michael Schaefer. He was at high school.
Yeah.
Get behind me, like, follow me.
Because I had, I looked at the shape, like, well, it's 9:05, 9:10, 9:15.
We get this show.
Thankfully, the agenda was in order that it was.
All right, we'll come back in order here, and, if you're eating, please continue. Robert Sampson. Presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Board Commissioners. Wanted to, coming to you today, and this is a project that we've been working on for several months now. We've had several meetings along the way, but, I'm coming to you and before you this morning to give you a proposal that we are working on that will actually, we're looking at changing our current work schedule. to kind of give you a little history to get you up to speed to where we are today. We are currently working what they call a modified 24/48 work schedule. That is a schedule that was started way back in the 80s when EMS was first established in Scotland County. You may or may not know that back then, EMS was established running one ambulance and very quickly went to two ambulances. In 1996, when I came on full-time with Scotland EMS, we were currently working this schedule, that modified 24/48. We did that with two ambulances, and we were averaging around 4,000 calls a year. To kind of get you up to speed on what type of calls we were running back then, we were doing all the convalescent in this county. So patients who that were bedbound, that needed to go to doctor's appointments, we were taking them, waiting. Doctor would come out to the ambulance, would assess the patient, then we would take them back home. We did all the dialysis transports back then, taking patients back and forth to transports. And we also did the vast majority of the inter-facility transports out of the hospital from the emergency room to Duke, Chapel Hill, and other level 1 trauma centers. Plus, we ran 911 calls. And we did that with two ambulances, way back then, running about 4,000 calls. So now let's fast forward to today, and I will show you the data to where we are today. But in 2022, we ran 7,268 calls. So we have just about doubled the call volume just in 911 calls over the last 20 plus years. And we're still working the same work schedule. There's other reasons why I'm bringing this proposal to you, and we will also talk about in this presentation, is recruitment. We are having a very difficult time as it pertains to recruitment. And I will go into more detail on why that is and what is the state trend. So Kevin, I'll go ahead and get started. First, I just want to give you a comparison of what the state of North Carolina looks like, okay, in the EMS world today. So what you see in purple are all of the counties that we were able to pull data from that are working 12-hour shifts, okay, in the EMS world, okay. And as you can see, that is a huge number, especially all around us. What you see in blue are counties that transitioned to 24/72 work schedule, okay? And as you can see, there's a good number of those, and those numbers will continue to grow. And then, of course, what's in green is counties where the EMS service is working some type of a modification of a 24-hour work schedule. Like in our case, we were doing that modified 24/48. And as you can see, we're right nestled right there all by ourselves. Okay, and I will show you why that's relevant here momentarily. When we look at, I did a survey of current full-time employees that we currently have right now in EMS. And as you can see, I only have 5 employees that live in Scotland County. Okay. All the rest of my full-time employees live outside of the county. So that tells you right off the bat that I'm having to go outside of our boundaries to recruit. Now, we have taken steps along the way over the last year or so to try to increase that number in Scotland County. The high school has an EMT program. We have partnered with them. They do all their clinicals with us. And we guarantee them part-time jobs once they graduate, they test and they get their EMT certification. But as you can see, the numbers just aren't there in our county. So we're having to go outside of the boundaries to recruit. But as you can see, I'm not going far. Why am I not going far outside of those boundaries? Again, because of the current work schedule that we're currently working. And I'll explain more about that momentarily.
Wait, go back. So this is employees, okay, I've got it now.
Those are Scotland County.
That's Scotland County.
That's
The county that they're from.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
So for an example, I have 5 full-time employees that live in Robinson County, 6 that live in Robinson County.
You got somebody coming all the way from Warren County.
Yes, and he's actually a full-time employee that's been with us for many, many years. He was a resident of Scotland County, he remarried, moved to the beach, and he actually commutes back and forth. I'm sorry. So as we look at our local recruitment comparison, I'm going to take just a minute because there's a lot of good data here that I want to make sure that you understand. When you look at Scotland County, we currently are working a 24-hour shift, fluctuating work week. Our annual hours worked is 2,912 hours a year. Those are mandatory hours guaranteed that we're going to work. Our call volume, and these are all rough rounded numbers, are 7,200 calls annually. Okay, and that number is already projected to increase this year. When you look at Robeson County, they work 12-hour shifts. Their pay structure is comp time over 40 hours. They work 2,080 hours. Their call volume is 32,000 annually. Hope County, they too are 24 hours, overtime over 40. Their annual hours is 2,016. They run out an average of 9,100 calls. Hope County is a hospital-based system. Okay, so it's important to know that, but I don't want to compare it to them because they are a hospital-based system. Richmond County too is a hospital-based system. The EMS service is owned by First Health. They too are overtime over 40. They run 2912, and their average call volume is 8,500. More 12 hours, overtime over 40, 2080, 20,000. And then Anson, they work the exact same schedule we work. Fluctuating work week, 2912, 6,000. Now, what's important about this is I want to bring out. Anson County is having the exact same problem we're having. They cannot recruit. And that's a lot because of what's happening all around them. So they too are in the same boat that we are in, and they're having to get creative, think outside the box. What can we do to recruit good, competent paramedics? What's also important, I'm sorry, Ken, one more. What's also important is, I'll go back to that screen, is if you look at Hope County, their population, we're what, 365 square miles, population 35,000. And we're running 7,200 calls. You have Hope County, that's a smaller geographic, population's a little more than us, but we're almost at the same call volume as them. Anson County, larger population, and we exceed them as far as call volume. So we are busy. Okay, that's the point I want to make. We are busy. Okay, come on. So some of the current challenges that we're faced with. Obviously, safety is always a huge concern when it comes to safety. I mean, as far as challenges. Fatigue. Because of the call volume, our current staff, with the shifts that they're working, currently, especially on the weekend, they're not getting enough of downtime. So, and I'll give you an example of that in just a minute, but that's a big challenge for us right now, is our call volume is increasing, but we're not getting the downtime. Okay. So obviously, violent calls is just another safety issue that we have. I think that's no big secret to us in this room. Increasing the call volume and then vehicle operation. So there again, because of the fatigue, the vehicle operations just tags along that. So there's been studies to show that when you are fatigued and then you're getting out, you're trying to perform, you're not going to perform at a good level. Okay. It's just not going to happen. Other challenges is recruitment, and lack of applications. Okay. We have received one application since this time last year. Okay. One application. That's what drew me to figuring out why. Okay. Why is this happening? We're not getting experienced applications. And then there's no interest in the current work schedule. So when we were not recruiting, we were not getting full-time applications. We went to the drawing board to figure out, and I asked the question, why? Why is this happening? Across the board, the reply was the same. with the current workforce that we have today, the current workforce does not have an interest in working 24/48. Okay, they have no interest in it whatsoever. The sad part of it is, they have the control. Because they tell me, no, sorry, I don't want to do it. Because they know they can go somewhere else that will offer them what they want and get a job. So they benefit, I lose. Retention, we did lose 4 staff members last year. One wanted to go back to school and went to work in Moore County because they could offer her 12-hour shifts. That's what she wanted. Others left for not to go non-EMS related careers. I have a part-time employee right now that's a single mom that loves us, wants to work full-time with us, but repeatedly has told me, I can't do 24/48. So she chooses to go work at Robinson, that I just showed you, runs 32,000 calls a year. Because they can give her what she wants and what she needs. It's okay, Kathy. So what I did was I wanted to show you kind of what the current work schedule looks like for Scotland County EMS. So I just did April 2023. We currently are doing a modified 24/48 schedule. We average 48 to 56 hour work weeks, 2,912 hours a year, and we're doing this with 3 shifts. And what's important is if you look at the pattern, where we're getting into trouble now is when we get to our weekends. So if you look on B shift, when they work Friday, they're working 24-hour shift. They're getting off that morning. They're going home. They're sleeping half the day away to do nothing but come right back in and work 24 hours all over again. Okay. That happens back-to-back weekends. Now, 25 years ago, when I first joined, we could do this. It was a cakewalk. We were running 4,000 calls. Now we've almost doubled our call volume, still working the same shifts. So as we look at what the proposal would be, this is what we are proposing. And I'll go into more detail in just a minute, but I want you to see what a new schedule would look like. And as you can see, it's going to give them a better work-life balance. Okay. My staff can have more downtime, more time off so that they can rest before they're coming back to perform for a 24-hour shift. Okay.
Rob, how would this affect accrued time on sick vacation?
So Susan and I, we and Lori and Kevin, we've had meetings and we're continuing to have meetings to address those issues, those questions that you have. As far as how, I think the accrual rate, that would remain the same. The accrual rate will remain the same. But what we've got to look at is, number one, how can I give my employees a better work-life balance? Number two, how can I recruit? How can I've got to figure out a way, I'm having to figure out a way how I can compete with the market and compete with surrounding counties that are getting all of these employees. So that's what we're looking at. So to go to a new work schedule, we would actually work 2184 hours a year, but I have to build a 4th shift in order to do this. Okay. Where we currently are working 3, now we've got to build a 4th shift. So now the next slide, I think, gets us to where I actually, it'd be the next one after that. So how we do it. But I did a survey. I surveyed my staff. I had 30 replies, and 70%, preferred the 24/72 shifts. 11% preferred the current work schedule, and then 19% actually preferred a 24/72 with some 12-hour shifts mixed in. And where that's coming in is there is a number out there that has no interest in wanting to do 24-hour shifts. They want to just do 12. They want to be able to go home every day or go home every night. So that was a small number, but 70% did have an interest in the 24/72 shifts. Okay, Kevin. So here's the meat and bones. Here's where we'll spend our time. My proposal is to change to a 24/72 work schedule that would go into effect July 1. But I will actually expand this over the next 2 years to complete. My goal here is to do 2 things. Number 1, to make us marketable, to recruit, to retain, and to do this with little impact to our citizens.
You said something a minute ago about you got to create a complete.
I have to create a 4 shift.
I got you. So that means a lieutenant or whoever, supervisor?
Yes, sir, and I'll go over that. That's in here as well. So the completion date to transition the entire department will be in 2026. Okay. So here's how we do it. Those that were on the board last year, if you recall, or actually 2 years ago, when you voted for us to transition to running 4 ambulances. Okay, we did that initially doing it on a peak time hour. The following year, I came back because it was so successful, and remember, we actually moved that ambulance to the northern part of the county. We were so successful with that I wanted to take that and turn it into a 24-hour truck as well, which put us running 4 ambulances 24 hours. So this board approved last year 3 full-time positions and 3 part-time positions to be able to run that 4th truck. Keep in mind, I recruited 0. So those positions were still sitting there that I'm filling with part-time employees every single day. So my proposal will be to use the 6 positions that were allocated from last year to build the 4 shift with it. Okay? And that would give us the 3 ambulances for a 24/72 work schedule. Okay? So now that gives me my 4 shifts running with 3 ambulances.
What are you gonna do? You'd have to cut away from
No, this includes Waveland. But the 4th ambulance would be by Waveland truck. Okay, because we run 3 at the main base, and then the 4th ambulance is in Waveland in the northern part of the county to cover the northern part of the county. So we will use part-time employees to cover that 4th truck for this remaining for this upcoming year. Because keep in mind, I'm working part-timers constantly all the time. Without them, I wouldn't survive. Okay. But what this does, it takes us from having to use 3-4 part-timers a day and cuts it down to 2. Okay, 2 per shift. Now this will allow me to begin the transitioning, as I said, with what was given to me from last year. So therefore, I'm not asking for any additional funds to start, because the funds were given in last year's budget. I just haven't been able to fill those full-time positions.
Well, keep in mind with that has to be carried over. That doesn't just automatically roll over to the next year. So that would be something that we would have to allocate it that way, or not. It's not just gonna be there, sitting there waiting on you. So.
Right. So what we would do is we would continue with, we would ask to convert 2 of those part-time slots starting next year. Okay, to a full-time in 2024, 2025. And then we would do 2 more in 2025, 2026. So basically at the end of 2025, 2026, I would only be left with 1 opening per shift, intentionally, that we would just work with our part-time employees to ensure that they are getting some time, because that's why they apply to this part-time. Commissioner, to go back to your comment, Commissioner Williams, we would have, in order to build the fourth shift, I would have to create a supervisor's position for that shift.
And it will be someone.
That is correct. Yes, we would promote from one of our FTOs. And then we would reclassify one paramedic position to the FTO or assistant supervisor position for the fourth shift. We would reclassify one of those positions. And then also one of the things that we're asking for is an EMS, a dedicated EMS training officer position. This is something that we've actually needed for quite some time. Around us, in all of our contiguous counties, we're the only EMS service to where the assistant director also assumes the role of the training officer. That worked for many, many years. I used to do it when I was the assistant director. But because of the call volume, because we're just so busy now, we're not doing this job as effective as it needs to be. And I feel passionately that the only way to get us back where we need to be is we need to separate that position so that it is isolated and it's its own person. So I had a conversation with Samantha, communications director with 911, and I asked her, do you feel that you could benefit from having a training officer to help you with your stuff? Her reply was absolutely. She can definitely use that. So what's important is, even over at the 911 center, they are required to have an EMD, it's Emergency Medical Dispatch Certification. That is ran through OEMS. Okay? They're also required to be CPR certified and others. So this training officer, after having conversations, we agreed that we would join forces and come together and have a training officer that would oversee both agencies. Okay? 80%, my proposal is that we would cover 80% of the salary costs, and then communications would cover 20%. Okay? We're coming joining forces, that way we both can benefit from having this training officer. It's going to make us better. It's going to keep our employees sharp and where they need to be. So that is the proposal to get us where I feel strongly that we need to be. Now, there's a couple of things I want to make sure that this board knows, and you hear from me now, because we will hear about this in the future. Currently today, when EMS was established in the state of North Carolina, EMS fell under the Department of Transportation guidelines. Okay? I don't know why they did that way back then, but they did. There is lobbying going on in Raleigh today to where they're looking to change that and move our profession from under DOT and put us under DHHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, which makes total sense because we're the only healthcare professional that's not under DHHS. But when that happens, and I do feel confident that it's going to happen, it's just a matter of when, but when that happens, 24-hour shifts will become a thing of the past because DHHS is not going to allow that. There will, EMS at the most will only work 12-hour shifts. So when that happens, with this approval, I'm setting the groundwork for that. When it comes time to have to make that transition, the groundwork will be set as far as the number of employees that we have. Okay. So that is something that we're also looking into the future that this would also benefit us.
Why would you not work 12-hour shifts instead of 20? I mean, why would you work 24-hour shifts and not work 12-hour shifts?
Believe it or not, us old school people, we like the 24-hour shifts because you work your shift and then you go home and you're not having to come right back. That's the old school mentality. Now, I will tell you, the new generation, they don't want it. I mean, they just, they don't want
And
that.
that's why I'm asking,
Yeah.
why would you not go to the 12-hour shifts?
Because for us to be able to go to 12-hour shifts now, I would be standing here asking for roughly 12 full-time employees. It would double the amount of staff that I need.
That answers my question.
So my goal here is to get us to where we are attractive to the market. We can recruit, we can retain, and we're building for the future. And this is I feel the very best way that we can start that with the least amount of impact to our citizens as far as money. Now, is it gonna impact patient care? Absolutely not. It's gonna make it even better. So those are the things those are the things that are driving us and driving me to be here before you today. Now, real quickly before I end, I just want to let you know some of the things that we are doing that are great, that really validates us being here. Okay. We have got new equipment, i.e. stair chairs and other equipment to get us state of the art with everyone that's around us. Believe it or not, you know what's a good recruiting tool in our profession? The toys that we have. Okay? Commissioner, you'll validate that statement.
Safety
That-
back injuries too.
That is a recruitment tool. So we have brand new stretchers that are electric. Okay, you don't have, and our goal here was to take as many lifts out as possible to reduce work-related injuries. So we have new stretchers. We were able to get new stair chairs that were actually purchased 100% by the United Way. They actually gave us money and we purchased every single one of them. So I did not have to ask for taxpayer dollars for that. We've got the Easy IO drills. Okay, again, good equipment that's going to make us better. It gives us the opportunity to be able to provide excellent patient care at no cost to the county. We have established our association. Okay, the First Responder Public Safety Association. Okay, and we've been able to get all kind of equipment, not just VMS, but for the fire departments and others at no cost to the county. So we're doing a lot of good things. We're making ourselves compatible to other EMS services. I feel like we're in a good place. I like where we are, but I like even better where we're headed. And then, of course, we've also worked very hard at applying for the BRIC grant, which is in hopes that will be money, federal money coming in that will help us as we start moving towards the renovation and building of a new emergency services complex. Again, if that becomes a reality, we were able to do that without using county taxpayer dollars.
Whenever you get through, I want to ask you a question.
Sure, and that really concludes, that concludes this presentation. And I just thank y'all for y'all's support, because without your support, we cannot be successful. So I'll close.
Hey, I want to make sure I understand your personnel costs. You're saying we've got 6 permanent positions that you haven't filled yet.
So 6.
They're already in the budget.
That are already in the budget?
Yes.
And you're using those funds, are you using those funds to pay part-time help?
Yes.
Okay. So if you fill those 6, then what you're asking for is the funds necessary to employ additional part-time help.
No, it wouldn't be additional part-time help. We would continue to use the part-time employees that we currently have.
But you're paying for that out of the funds that you're not using for permanent staff,
Right.
that you are going to fill.
Correct, but
He already budgets for the.
it's already budgeted.
That's already
All that's already budgeted in my budget every year.
Okay, so let me ask the question differently. what do you anticipate in additional personnel between now and the end of 26 that is not already budgeted? Is
And I'll
that,
break it down even because I think this is where you're going.
Yeah.
Is the dollars.
yeah,
What's it gonna cost us?
well,
between-
so I want the staff and then what that's gonna cost. Because all your costs, all of the costs are gonna go up. Personnel staff's gonna go up.
It is to a degree, but what I want you, I think what's important to make sure that we know is the money that we're spending right now with part-time employees because of the shortage that we have. I feel, and Susan, you correct me if I'm wrong here, I feel that with replacing them where they're getting all this overtime hours, okay? We're putting them in with a with a full-time employee, okay? Either it's gonna lower some or should stay close to the same. As far as from that salary
Because we're
standpoint.
already budgeting the salary and fringe for those positions.
Yes, but we're just, where it's budgeted for full-time employees, but I'm using part-time employees to fill it because we haven't been able to recruit. So the money is budgeted annually for those 6 positions. I just haven't been able to fill them with full-time employees. I'm using part-time employees to backfill.
But you have additional money already allocated for part-time staff.
Yes,
Yeah, he budgets for part-time staff.
yeah, the part-time staff and
Let's
full-time.
go back to the same question. What do you anticipate as your additional personnel numbers and dollar amounts between now and the end of 26?
So it would, I think, to answer your question, I think it's gonna be a total vacancy. Over the course of now, over the next 2 years.
You don't
3
think
years.
there's gonna be additional money?
Well, the training officers.
Well, the training officer's position, yes.
Yeah.
The, creating the supervisor position, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, reclassifying one of the paramedic positions to an FTO position, yes. So yes, those will be some additional increases there. Okay, because we gotta add that supervisor position, so forth and so on. Plus the training officer's position, yes, which is a new position.
Did you say they would be internal,
What's that? I'm sorry.
the supervisor position?
Yeah, of course, we will, yes, I mean, we've got our FTOs, they're basically the assistant supervisors. They're the ones who, when the supervisor's out, they're running the show, they're running the shifts. So yes, I mean, we would promote from one of our FTOs.
How many folks do you have, how many individuals show up for a shift?
2, 4, 6,
6?
8, 9 plus a supervisor. Today. If we're running 4 ambulances, that's 8, and then shift supervisors.
How many folks you got? How many people you got?
Full-time, 20, we can go back to 23, we have 23 full-time employees. Now, that's just what I have. If you add the vacancies that I haven't filled, obviously that number is more, but right now I currently have 23 full-time.
So what would you have after the vacancies filled?
So you would add 6 to that, right off the bat.
So do you have some people working more than, yes, more, you got
Yes.
working multiple shifts?
Yes,
When you got shift A, B, and C, you got somebody working A and C.
absolutely.
So what do you think you're spending in overtime?
I don't have those numbers before me.
Is it gonna reduce your cost, Susan, by having more people? And less overtime?
I think it's gonna be even.
There will not be a cost savings if the savings don't pan out over, by 2026, you're looking at an increased cost with no savings actualized to 225,000 annually.
A different question. If my average work hours are 2,900,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna go to 2,100,
Mm-hmm.
how does what is my pay change?
So that's something that Susan and Kevin and I, we're currently working on that now, and Lori, to fine tune those numbers. So I don't have that number today for you, but we are currently working on it.
But my question is, are you gonna have somebody leave because they're not getting the same?
We're looking at existing full-time employees, keeping their annual salary similar. They're not looking at a 20% decrease in salary because at that one time, they will all.
Yeah, this is null and void at that point. And the truth of the matter is, Commissioner Gibson, in having Nash County just completed this exact model that I'm proposing. And they were the model that I followed. And they, exactly the same thing. They knew we gotta do this, but our current employees can't lose money, or there's no need to do it. You know, they're all looking at that point.
Your solution is worse than your problem.
That's exactly right.
But that does mean if we're able to recruit after that, there will be a pay differential between that new employee and that existing employee.
And a lot of their employees are very tenured, got a lot of years.
Yes, I mean, I've got employees
Right.
I got a supervisor that's gonna have 30 years in November. I've got a second supervisor that's got 26 years.
Are they retiring?
Yeah.
Well,
About to retire.
that was he'll probably be retiring next year. He's not gonna retire this year. I beg him to say. But I've got road medics that have 15 plus years. So I have staff that are loyal to Scotland County units. And they're the ones that we definitely want to keep. And we don't want them leaving, going elsewhere. Any other questions? Good questions.
I'm through.
No, very good questions.
Does anybody else have anything question wise? And this is that your pleasure, I do assume, Jason? It's their pleasure is to any action today or whenever.
There's no action needed today. This would be in the
That's what I
budget.
was getting. This will be part of the budget.
We appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And again, we appreciate y'all's support.
Thank you, sir.
Well, let me clarify this. If y'all don't like it, please say so.
I got you. It's included in there. Okay. Speaking of which, we're gonna move on to the 2023-2024 budget. We have about 5 minutes.
Okay, well, actually, there are two things I want to bring up. One is fairly quick, and I'll ask Robert to add it, chime in on this one also. Monday afternoon, had a call from our rescue squad. We have 2 rescue trucks. One is in the shop for an indeterminate amount of time, waiting to find out if it's fixable or not. And the other one last Friday, apparently you can go off and drive a truck while it's on fire. Because that happened last
I
Friday.
heard about that. The break.
Yeah, the brakes started, I guess, locked up and started burning up. So with that, they've gotten a repair done, so it is back on the road. The truck that was authorized was supposed to be here, supposed to have been delivered in January. We still have no earthly idea when it's going to be delivered. So that is where.
That was supposed to be here before.
That's what David talked about at our last meeting.
Yeah, there have been, what I understand, and having a conversation with David, what the issue has been is the fire station in Arlington, Virginia, where the truck is that we're gonna be receiving, they have had delays getting the replacement truck for it. So in return, they can't give it up until they get their new one in.
We haven't paid them yet.
I can't speak on that. I don't know what we have done on that.
So we haven't paid them.
So that's where the delays, that's where the delays have come in.
Now,
Which one did the brakes catch on? Big
The big Rescue 3, yes.
But that truck.
That truck's a 2000. That truck's a 2000. It's 23 years old.
So now they have found another truck that is actually sitting on the lot of a different design that the vendor is willing to sell for $200,000. And they could have it here, I'll say by the end of next week. they said within 24 hours. I don't believe anybody anymore. And last night, the city discussed this at their joint meeting, and the request is, I guess, from the rescue squad, that the 200,000 be covered by the city and the county. The city agreed to purchase the truck. They would put in 100,000, if the county puts in 100,000, and they would go ahead and purchase.
We would forget about the one that we're waiting on from Virginia.
We would still get that one because we're actually allocating state funds for it. But so when that one comes in, that would have us replace both of the rescue trucks.
How old is the small?
It's a 2011, but it's got an old 6.0 motor in it.
Oh, my God.
And yeah, so I mean, our ambulances had them, and what it's doing right now, the last one we had before we converted from diesel to gas, we dropped about $12,000 to fix it.
So you need action there.
This would be action.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Now, do we have, my question is, where are we gonna pull this money from?
This would be ultimately a fund balance allocation. We've already reported all the ARPA monies.
So we can
spent.
offset it,
Yeah.
technically, if the ARPA money. So, all right, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay. All right. The next item, and we'll go ahead and talk about this, and this does impact going to the budget discussion. Part of it is looking at the health insurance for it. We did go out for bids, or we went out for, well, we accepted quotes for health insurance. You have a hard copy of this sheet in front of you. It'll be much easier to see there.
Well, I don't go about much easier, but we can see it.
Yeah. With that, we went off and we received, we're currently with the League of Municipalities. We received the bid from them through InChip, FCC, who we had health insurance with previously, and Mark III. With that, we went off and we asked each of the providers to give us the same, basically the same plans on what we had. That was the best way of keeping them in. With that, the League of Municipality gave basically an 8.6% renewal. InChip was 5.4% above. FCC was a 0.5% decline. And Mark III, okay, is a
1.84.
Yeah, 1.84% decline. So with that, with the recommendation, after going through these, the recommendation is to switch to Mark III. The big difference, the two lowest bids are comparable plans, FCC. Again, we were with them for 10 years before approximately. We had there, the big difference in between Mark III and FCC is the network. FCC's network has expanded since we were on there before, but Mark III is a Blue Cross network. Thereafter, there's also, will you check that for me? Answer that for me. There's a, with this, Mark III is also offering, and I believe FCC is doing administrative portal also, but Mark III is also our other insurance provider. They are our vendor for our supplemental insurances So they have an administrative tool which would basically allow for employee self-service for all of our for all of our insurances, health and supplemental insurance policies. So that's, would be a load off of HR in doing that. Both plans would have a wellness benefit, as well as an implementation credit, to go into it.
So if I read this right, Susan, we'll be down to 66 remaining on the PPO after this year. Employees.
Yes, and that's including, that's about half active and half retirees.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and I'm gonna tell you, I don't understand a lot of this, but I'm looking at.
Yes. Not personal parts.
Tell me what the 540%, or let's just, I guess we're talking about Mark III and FCC. Looking at those two, what's the minus 47, 0.47 and minus 1.84?
Okay, let me just kind of explain what you're looking at.
Okay.
The first two columns are our current with the league is fiscal year 23.
The first two columns, we're talking about it, first two.
Whereas you see the total of 3,388,230, that's currently with the league.
Right here.
And then you see.
That's who we're with currently.
Yes, sir. And then you see, fiscal year 22, the league, that was our renewal from the league.
So if we stay with that, that would be a $291,000 increase.
Right.
And this is just county dollars. We just stripped out how much the county
Where are you talking?
dollars.
Right here, right here. So you got current
Oh,
year.
okay, okay, I got it.
Then 290.
No, okay, I got it.
I see.
I got it.
Yeah.
And then the same thing goes.
Okay, now InChip gave us the quote for, there's exact numbers.
Who's in here?
InChip, and Dave Costa is here representing InChip, is the North Carolina Health Insurance, help me out, Pool. Okay. They are with Gallagher. Gallagher is the company that, sponsors that. And Blue Cross is also, the provider there as well. Now, they gave us the employee portal there was bells and whistles. It was awesome. But
Susan loved their presentation.
yeah, but, their numbers would, be 183,000 increase, which is 5.4 increase over current. What you see there is increase over current.
Over the current, which is what we have with the units.
Yes, sir. Mhm. And then you see, First Carolina Care, which they're represented here, Jack Ficklen and Jill Emerson and Darlene Burrows. They're represented here, and, their quote would be a negative almost 16,000, and that's why you see the negative 0.47.
Okay, they're
They're undercurrent.
Is, and you're comparing that with what we're currently paying with the league.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then Mark III is very comparable. They gave us three. The first quote you see here is a negative 62,366, which is almost a 2% reduction from current. Okay, but there's what we have with the league municipalities. We just finished our wellness assessments. We had a half a day today. We're going to have another day next week. They come in and do on-site wellness assessments. First Carolina Care, of course, started us off with that years ago. The league has done that. And if we wanted to continue one of those, we also have a Health Map RX plan, which is a diabetes program that employees can join, and they get lots of health coaching for their diabetes. They get incentives and get free testing strips, free kits, and they also get incentives and help with the medications.
Now,
So we wanted
get
just to
lost.
know.
Is that under FCC?
FCC has health coaching as well,
But that's,
Not
you're
this-
talking about.
but
who we're
not
talking
this
about.
particular program.
Okay,
This is the program that the league already has. We've had this with the league.
I got
So the three last columns Where you see the green, mark 3, that's just the health insurance. Now, if we also wanted to keep one, either the health wellness assessments or the health map RX, just one of those two, it would be negative 19,000, which would be similar to what FCC has, is negative 0.57. That's with just one of those programs. Now, if we wanted both, it would be less than 1% increase in current.
And presently, we have both.
Right.
So the final one, Mark 3, the last one. is
Now,
the
that
most-
would be what we would love to keep.
That's the most comparable to what we actually have.
Yes. Yes. And it would just be 1% over.
Does the FCC quote continue with the same things that we've got now?
Not the same programs. It's the health coaching. They offer health coaching. Y'all chime in here. It's health coaching, and they can also offer us the on-site wellness.
We do the on-site wellness, where we do the.
But the health map
blood
RX
pressure and all that.
program, where they get incentives and free kits and things like that.
And we do chronic disease management too.
We don't have that program at present, but the nice thing about being a smaller organization is that we have the flexibility to explore those opportunities, and we don't have to go through a long entrance process if we wanted to implement something like that. So this morning, when I learned about it, reached out to our director of utilization management and our pharmacy manager, and they, familiarize themselves with the program that you have right now, and confirm that while we can't match apples to apples, it is something that we can discuss.
And Susan can correct me on this, but I think it boils down to the free test strips on the diabetes and the test kits, and also the A1C.
And that goes along with the health coaching.
Right,
The
which we do
one-on-one.
have the
Mhm.
health coaching and the chronic disease management.
And the wellness events would be provided in partnership with First Health of the Carolinas, with our local
We come
hospitals.
down here.
But the main, just like, with the Gallagher, the Mark 3, we're already with Mark 3 with our supplementals. They can offer us a benefits administration portal that would integrate with our current UNIS system. The FCC has an administrative portal, but we don't know at this point if it can integrate with our current system. But Mark 3 already has that up and running, and it's very similar to Gallagher. And with the increase, when we went with Munis, payroll was doing all of the entries. Now, that's most of the entries now, most of the onboarding now is with HR. So now all of that for a new employee onboarding, HR is doing all of the entries for that. Whereas if we had a benefits admin portal, the employee could go online. We have what we've homemade our new employee portal with seamless docs, but what we can have is a seamless, the employee goes online, they do their enrollments, the enrollments go to each individual vendors. We do not have to go to each individual admin system to do a manual entry into those systems. This would go directly to the vendors. We could do a self-bill, and it would integrate into Munis.
And our portal would do that also. We just don't have and don't particularly want the payroll deduction supplemental. That would still stay separate, which is paid by the employee, not by. And if there's an opportunity, I would like to say a few other things.
Help you, sir.
I was gonna say, I first wrote an account in 1996 in the county of Scotland, and then we kept it for 3 years, and they went with a pool that was administered by.
I'm sorry, what is your name, sir?
Jack Ficklin.
Okay.
I'm sorry, excuse me, but I should have said that. Most of you, I'm familiar with you, I apologize. But when we wrote it, and I lived in Scotland, so when we wrote that, then we kept it for 3 years. We lost it to the Blue Cross Blue Shield. Blue Cross was administrator. We picked it back up in 2005. Lost it to the county commissioners pool in 2009. Picked it back up when Blue Cross left as administrators in
Cigna came in and had a 30% rate increase. Then we picked it back up in 2011 and kept it for the next 8 years, an average 4.2% rate increase per year, which was extremely low, particularly compared to medical inflation at 10, 11, and 12. So I've heard a lot about promises and everything with Mr. Logan standing up here. And just want to tell you that we do have a history. So most people, Duke is not in the room right now, but we also rep the city for years and years. We'd love to have the county back. I believe there's a big advantage to being local. When Mr. Logan spoke of the, for example, teacher of the year, we do I do $1,000 for my company. Have awarded that to the teacher of the year for the last 10 or 15 years. Also Habitat, hospice, ball teams, Optimus, churches, all the other things that go along with property taxes, sale taxes, and everything else living in Scotland County. So, I understand why you cannot spend, too much of the county's money just to keep it local. But if it's close and if we're in the ballpark, we would really love to have it back, and we would do everything possible to make sure it goes easy from an administration standpoint, also for Sue. And as I said, I've worked with Susan since '96, so, and Kevin too, for a large part of it. So just wanted to put that in as an additional to it. Thank you.
So with that, the health plans ultimately are comparable, because that's where we've done the decisions. There's going to be one change due to a change in IRS regulations, we believe, but it's something that nobody's really gonna pay a whole lot of
Yeah,
attention
it'll be
to.
minuscule.
But with that, the two lowest bids on insurance are FCC and Mark III. Is recommendation to go with Mark III.
Does Mark III have a representative?
No.
And he was out of town today, I'm sorry.
Yeah, he's a North Carolina Health Insurance.
So Mark III is not local?
No.
They are our current broker with our supplementals.
Yes. We have an existing relationship with them.
This is the toughest all year, every year, I guess First Carolina Care or FCC, whatever we want to call it. We start calling it FCC, I start thinking.
Me too.
Yeah.
But, second year rate cap at 12% scares me a little bit because I guarantee it won't be, it'll be 11.9, but.
Well,
That's worst case scenario, though. That's if you had a really bad year.
hopefully the history
On that.
The talking points.
That talking point, the second one down. I'm not saying it would, but
Well, I would say previously, all those years I talked about, we also had a rate cap and we were at 4.2 for
I
that.
know, I'm just throwing that out there.
I got the figure that you want.
No, I believe that. I'm just-
And I will say this, the highest, they gave us, when we were with First Carolina Care, now I'm still for Mark III, but I have a history with these folks as well. But they said they would keep us under 10 and they did. The highest we've had is 9 with them. But with the, Intergovernmental Health Alliance that Mark III has with Blue Cross, this is a quasi self-funded plan. And it's similar to, I know you guys getting in the weeds here, but with the league, we were in a consortium. With this Intergovernmental Health Alliance, we're also in a consortium, so we have a cushion and there's also a stop loss. So we can keep our renewals. We need to bump it up a little bit each year for our reserves, but I believe we can keep our renewals in the lower single digits with this.
One really important point, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, Kevin, but when you're in a self-funded plan, a self-funded pool, you do benefit from everybody else's experience, or you also don't benefit from everybody's experience. And when you leave, you have a run out, which means you have to pay the claims that are incurred but not paid. When you have a fully insured plan, like the one we're showing, is that when you leave, you don't pay anything. You just pay the premium and we pay the claim.
So Mark III has nobody here, right?
Correct.
Right, he was out of town.
additional, I mean.
If I can have 60 seconds, yes, sir.
Go ahead, go ahead.
You know, my name's David Costa. I'm the
Come around.
Thanks for having me. I just wanted to show up in case you did have any questions today. I wasn't expecting any, but my name's David Costa. I'm a lead consultant for the North Carolina Health Insurance Pool. We launched in 2018. We are a consortium of currently 28 governments. We have 14 counties and 14 cities and towns here in North Carolina that join our pool. It's managed by Blue Cross, but we do all the underwriting, billing, administration behind the scenes. It is a self-funded pool. So there's a proposal on the table for 6%. That is a max cost. Typically, most of our groups are getting nice surpluses back each year. The largest increase ever passed off by NCHIP is 5%. So that is our, call it, what we do. We blend claims across 10,000 employees across the state. So, wanted to be here to answer any questions you have, but our proposal is basically saying this would be a 6% increase to never have to pay more than a 5% increase again in the future. So, if you have any questions, happy to take them. If you want to reach out to any of our current pool members, happy to do that as well. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Dave.
Also, they did give us an offer back in when they were formed.
In 2018, yes, sir.
Yeah. And basically, I think the primary concern at that point in time, since it was a startup, was potential capitalization.
Okay.
And that's not an issue.
Thank you, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
just want to make sure everybody had a chance.
Anybody got any?
I have one question. With the FCC network, how much of a difference would that be for our present network?
I can answer, if that's okay. Well, we have, the majority, I'd say, of the doctors in Scotland County, also the hospital, also Moore County, regional, all the counties in a 9-county rural area, plus, the University of North Carolina hospital system, which includes the direct hospitals in Raleigh, plus Duke Hospital System, Charlotte, which is now not CMC anymore. Atrium. Plus we have 2 networks that we call RAPs that give us access to national networks and also to the similar to the Medicost network, which we have not had any network problems. We believe that, and also if it's an out-of-network emergency, it's covered regardless of where it is. You have anything to add to that?
So it says on these talking points, MUSC Florence is not in the FCC. I don't know how big a deal that is.
MUSC is not, Medical University of South Carolina, not in Florence. McLeod is. McLeod is in the network. And we went back, Susan helped us kind of look at other things, but we looked at one case that the county had that was referred to MUSC, and we found out they were not in our network. Now, I don't know if they would have been covered because of the referral, often where the referral is from a network hospital, and there's no available person for that particular disease or that specialty, then it is covered when it's moved. Also, I don't know if it was an emergency situation or anything else. We hadn't had network issues on any. Sometimes somebody might come to you and say, okay, my orthopedic surgeon's not in there, and we find out, but we do have 3,700 orthopedic surgeons in there. So, network hadn't been.
Commissioner BJ, was that?
He did, yeah.
Okay.
Only other thing I'd say about Blue Cross, our success has been in competing with Blue Cross because of Blue Cross's size and because they have such a, giant amount of people. I mean, with the state plan, 740,000 people, and they have voted to move to Aetna in 2025, I believe, might be 26. But my point is, Blue Cross is probably our best. We would rather compete with them anywhere else because they're just so large. They have trouble with a group. Like with you, you're a big deal to us. 360 employees at Scotland County, and is a big deal for us, and we your special attention. I don't know if that's the situation with Blue Cross or not, but we want to make it work and do it right. That's why we've had you for so many years over the past 25, 30.
And that's one advantage with FCC and likely with Mark III or with NCHIP. When you're talking about a small agency or doing more of a pool mentality, you have better customization in your plan. Versus we're buying fully insured by Blue Cross, pick a box.
So this is not gonna be one that we do today.
We need it today because we have to do open enrollment meetings.
Hold my feet to the fire. Well, then I'll
I will
open
be
the floor for
scheduling meetings
whatever-
immediately after this.
I'll open the floor for whoever would like to take on that motion or whatever you want to do. And you look like you got something you want to say. You just got that look,
I'll yield to
just
the
that
not
preacher
so,
look.
I'll yield to the not so rugged pastor.
You know, he's a great pastor. You know, if you don't believe that, ask him. He'll tell you.
Oh,
If I heard correctly, there's not very much difference in the cost between FCC and Mark III. Now, if you add the two columns that have to do with the
$4,000.
about $4,000. And I think we've got a local representative living in this county.
Absolutely.
And I think we've had good experience with him, with that company, not necessarily him, for probably 18 of the last 25 years.
That didn't come out right. We'll replay it on YouTube later.
What I'm hearing, I think, is that Susan, you're recommending Mark III, but I don't think you've got any objection to FCC if that's the direction this board goes.
I have history with both. Mark III we've been with them for years and years and years with supplementals. I just believe technology-wise, that could get us where we need to be as far as streamlining our benefits administration. Mark III, yes. I love these guys. I've worked with these guys, but I just think just a business decision. I believe that Mark III can get us better technology-wise in our benefits administration. Not discounting anything that FCC can do. This is strictly what we can do and grow, because right now we're doing a lot with less people. And I think getting a smooth transition to benefits administration would be a huge benefit.
When you're talking about doing a lot with less people, you're talking about less county staff.
Yes.
May I ask a question, please? So respectfully, because we encounter this a lot, and just so for my own education, so we know how we can do better moving forward. Do you happen to know, a lot of times if people were to leave First Carolina Care and go somewhere else, they might take that administrative system with them because they don't want to start over. Do you know what the cost would be if you took that administration system and rolled that medical into it?
This is an in-house built admin system that Mark III has built.
Oh,
So it's just strictly for.
proprietary,
It's
they wouldn't
proprietary.
allow our
Right.
medical. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you. I'm a big fan of local. I just think we ought to do things local. You know, in my business, if I can do it local, I do it local, if I gotta pay just a little bit more for it. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion, keep it local and go with Mr. Franklin.
With FCC.
With FCC.
And I would second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I started to ask if there's any question, anybody over here? So, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
We can live with that, can't we?
Are we gonna leave?
That's what I say, I love these guys.
Because we're gonna do
We'll work
everything we
on
can
that.
to make it.
Please, because we need it. We need it.
And
we are.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, by the way, open enrollment meetings are tomorrow.
Are you serious?
I'm always.
Yeah, I agree.
We will be on the phone.
Are you gonna call Wayne up?
That's right.
I'll come.
All right, we'll,
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you all.
Thank
all.
you.
We look forward to working with you.
I will
Yes,
leave
sir.
it up to you other three on what you want to do. We still have to go through the budget, which he's gonna glance through. And we have that closed session afterward. Do you want to take a lunch break or do you want to?
Is Duke coming back?
Duke is not, John is.
I'm good to go. I'm
What
good.
What's your question?
Did you want to take a lunch before we did this or just keep on going?
No, I say keep going.
Yeah, I'm fine.
If we have to eat something, we can eat.
Yeah,
while
yeah, that's fine.
All right,
Yeah, we got
me
Unfortunately, there's plenty of stuff back
we're working. Yeah, let's keep moving.
And I invite anybody else who's here.
Yeah, my breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We'll move on here.
Okay.
Tell me to print one off.
I'm gonna be going through the, Excel file that, I delivered, emailed out last night. On this,
I don't know what happened on that. I don't know if it's that Google Drive doing it or what. I mean, it really screws it up until you get it converted into Excel.
yeah,
Now it's like, but
yeah.
once I converted it, it was easy.
Yeah, if you open this up in Excel, you won't have a problem. In Google Drive, this is a complicated plan. What I will do is I'm going to go off and also create the summary sheets in a PDF that I'm going to consolidate and send out. So you have a 20-page notebook of it as well. But with this, in the tabs, of course, you have the big numbers are general fund expended, big tabs, general fund expenditures. That is your total general fund. You go into it and you can see the line item detail for the current year, and the past 3 years. Original budget, amended budget, and actuals. The actual in this event for 2022 is as of March. That's just when I pulled the data to start this.
I can get mine pulled.
Yeah. So, and then GF REV revenue, that's the revenue for the budget in there. So right now, the budget that you have that I'm showing is $52,560,000, and it is balanced. The total general fund.
Now, wait just a second there. That number is with us funding the school at 10 million.
Yes.
As we discussed earlier in the
Correct.
300 capital, not with the additional 600. Small increase that.
It's an additional 340.
Wasn't so small.
Yeah.
But that's not included there.
That is not
That
included.
is not included in this. And how much of, and again, I'm trying to shorten this up here. How much of this is fund balance? Nothing? Or is it all?
Fund balance, there's basically $2 million in fund balance in this. Part of that is coming out of $450,000 going into public safety salaries, like we've done for the last 2 years off of that.
It's that ARP money, yeah. But how much true decrease of our fund balance would this do?
We have right now, I have a $1.3 million in fund balance, just for balancing. That's about $400,000 higher than the original budget last year. I do have the $200,000 for vehicles for the sheriff's department. That takes us from 5 vehicles to 10 vehicles.
So you're doing 5 of them here and 5 of them is regular.
Yes, because the 5 is recurring.
I got it.
So, and then, basically just your basically $300,000 in capital.
But if we entertain anything over what we've already said about the school, that would have to be added to that, right?
Yes,
I mean, there's nowhere else it would come. And that's keeping the rate as is.
correct. No change in the rate. Yeah, right now, the rate is unchanging, with this. If you come into the summary pages, what I've done is I break down each department, primarily into payroll, operating, and then capital. Capital includes, debt service, it includes some flow-through dollars, as well as your debt service. Payroll, again, with that, I think right now there are there are 3 new positions in this budget for next year. There is
What are those new positions?
an SRO officer for Wagram, which there's also an increase in SRO contract revenue. There is a supervisor position for EMS. So 4 new positions, Parks and Recreation, positions for ILS Johnson. I'm trying to think, there's, one other, the inspection position, which will also be a part year. I'll adjust that in here as well.
But that'll only be a part of the time.
Yes.
Why do you have, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know what page I'm on. But it's got everybody listed, but there's the jail total you have highlighted out, IT total you have highlighted, and number of COG you have highlighted. Is
Some
that
of the-
increases or
Some of them, if there was a coloring,
some are green, some are yellow?
those were when I was making changes, so I could just, so I would recognize when they're in there.
Oh, there's the tab now.
Now, you got that in a hard copy, I can't get, look,
It's
GFEXP.
GFEXP on the tab, and then you have to take it and go all the way back over to the left. So that makes sense. See, and you get the different one that I got. Yeah, I got out. Go down to that from there. See.
yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Oh, different. Well, you're over.
That's just, I don't tab.
But there's a tab in there that says GFEXP that has all.
Yeah. That's the master expenditure.
Right. That's what it.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Now, just going back over to summary tab, and this is, I will go off and give you a PDF that has all of these pages as a notebook. But with that, it's breaking down your different, like I said, payroll, operating, and capital. So of the $52 million of the total budget, 25.7 million, almost 25.8 is payroll, 9.5 is operations, and 17 million is in the capital classification. With this, so basically, part of this is salary studies pushing up your payroll. But with this, there's also a total decrease in operating from 9.9 to 9.5 million for the year. And we'll talk about, when I get to the schools, the budget there will be kind of screwy because we have to account for some of the salary, some of the reserve dollars that are going into the leases. But with that, basically 49% of our budget goes into personnel. 18% is operations, and a third is in that capital area. And then you can look across the bottom at the tabs. There's a tab for each each department, or at least each county department, governing body, you can see exactly where you are. Governing body is this board. There's no, the only change there is travel for next year. We just need to look at, just making sure that, for the conferences and committees that the board members travel to, we plan for them appropriately. So there was an increase there. Administration, that is, finance, that's finance and, my office, including Jason, Adam, and
HR.
economic development.
And HR.
And again, that is predominantly payroll. That, and the revenues on there, those are just, that's primarily sales tax. I'll show that number, I'll show you that information in a minute. Elections, again, the big shift there is we're looking to have primaries coming up, which would be a presidential primary next year, and with the possibility of a run. There will be revenue next year for filing fees and for filing fees. Also, yeah. Whatever the municipal elections this November. Because those are billed back to the municipalities. Tax office, again, breaking out there. With the tax office, the big change of it is looking into starting the Eagle View, that additional pictometry contract, which will allow for pictometry for revaluation, but it would also allow for public safety access as well. Register deeds, no significant changes there. And some of these departments, you will see that I do have revenue numbers attached to them, if they can, like register deeds. So they are in there.
So, jump ahead of you, maybe anyway. Soil and water, substantial decrease from 191,000 down to 84,000.
Yes.
What that is, right on hand.
That was we received, for this year, we received a $100,000 grant from the state for the Fair Lake Stand.
Okay.
Sheriff's Department, looking at changes there. The big change are the cars and one additional officer. Nothing major there. We do have in the jail, we are looking at a significant change in the meal cost. The cost per tray is going up 25%. So basically it's going up to just over $2 a tray, which when you figure out they're feeding 110 people 3 meals a day, that winds up being a significant increase. Medical costs are there. Sheriff has actually just received a notice on one inmate that they have $180,000 outstanding medical bill on them. So we just
have one then.
Yes, I believe so. We also do have approximately just under $300,000 replacement of the generator and the coolers for the jail. But we'll actually use the inmate trust fund, can cover those costs. So basically that shows up as a revenue and an expenditure in the jail because it's treated there, but it's reimbursed. the inmate trust fund can be used as long as those funds ultimately benefit the jail. Those monies come out of revenue from the canteen, things like that. Excuse me. So, whatever profit over the years builds up from selling things to the inmates, as well as telephone service, things like that. EMS, again, we are looking at, big change there is payroll. Also, operations are showing an increase, but basic part of that, most of that increase is through medical supplies. Our supply cost has just gone up. Supply for medical supplies has not caught up since COVID. That's correct. We are showing, we're putting in a increase in revenues. Of course, the board already did increase your layer for our category 3 reimbursement expense, which allows us to bill Medicaid at a higher rate. But that is within what they're doing. EOC, similar situation, no significant changes there. The revenue that we have for the EOC is a reimbursement primarily from the city of Lombard, and that is a declining amount that we'll have to agree on, that we've agreed on, and it's probably coming close to time to renegotiate. SCATS is no significant change there on transportation. April is still looking at doing some shifting in some of the services that they're providing, so looking to enhance the services, but doing so without a significant operational cost, or looking for additional grant dollars that they're pursuing. Inspections, again, we just have one position that we're going to be looking for as a change. Now, with that, okay, with, and I'll get this to you, but we do have, there is a recommended fee schedule change for the board, for commercial. It's just bringing us up in line as small changes, but it's primarily bigger changes for commercial and electrical, as well as demolition fees.
Again, I don't want to get too far ahead of you here, and we don't need to probably, unless somebody sees something they want to ask questions on about. I do have a question on the JCPC total. It's the same this year as it was last year, the year before, but I do know that we voted to increase that a couple $1,000 earlier, a month or so ago.
I don't know if it was that was for next year. I don't know if it was
Yeah, no, it wasn't even 25,000.
No. It was like 7,000, 7,500, something like that.
Yeah, that was for teen court.
It was teen, maybe.
No.
I don't.
Hang on, man.
Dorothy wanted something but then Regina came.
Yeah, Dorothy wanted something for 25.
That was teen court.
That was teen court.
Yeah, but
Then Regina came.
Increase in the funding from the admin or something like that.
Yeah, because there was a shortfall. There was a request for the programs And if if you all didn't increase it for local funds, they were gonna have to do something about,
But was that under this year or the coming?
it was the coming year, I believe.
That's what I thought.
Um,
I'm just saying
that-
that because it's not changed.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, it's not enough to really even,
No, it's not.
it's-
A lot, but I mean,
I'll find it and find out how much it is.
Okay. Yeah, it was 5,000.
5,000, 7,500, it wasn't much.
I'm not sure if the teen court money we've already funded.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
That's this year, yeah.
That was this year, yeah.
We'll verify. We'll verify, Jason.
Yeah,
The only
I'll
reason I
have
said
answer in
that
just a
was
second.
because the number was the same. That's the only reason I noticed that, or I wouldn't have noticed. Right.
Second.
Anything else major in this, Kevin?
Look through. There are no other, the other item, I'll mention recreation. And it will look like there's a,
It looks like a substantial cut, but we know it's not because that was probably those other buildings in there last year.
yeah, there's grant money, there's
Right. construction
construction projects that are in there that are just not in there for next year, so it's not,
The JCPC amount is $5,245.
Volunteer.
and there is the,
Less than the library was like.
yeah, library's no significant change there.
DSS for $500,000 more, but most of that's state and federal money.
Yeah, well, DSS, well, we'll talk about that. Brian, you want to talk about your fee structure? I'm trying to find. There is a change in, a requested change in fee structure.
And
For rentals.
Yeah, on our park rentals right now, we rent our parks based off of an entire day, full day. And those rentals range from $30 to $50 per day, for people to go out, have birthday parties, whatever events they want to host. We're proposing to raise those. I'm not sure how long they've been, $30 basically. I know they have been for the past 6 years. You know, we've made significant improvements in the park over the past 4 years. We're proposing to raise those to $100 per day. You know, it does cost to upkeep these parks annually. And, you know, we'd like to offset that cost by increasing that fee to $100 per park per day. I think that's feasible in terms of having an entire shelter area for an entire day.
Well, do you have a different fee for a county resident compared to a non-resident?
Not right now. You know, we don't have any different fee.
If you're having a birthday, is one of your parks Dragon Park?
Yeah, but that's a first come, first served.
So you're not charging for those birthday parties?
Right. I mean, and that park's used more than any.
I was gonna say. But you know, some families, you're gonna have 12 kids, may not wanna pay $100 to go out of a birthday party.
Right.
We charge our citizens to use the park for birthday party.
If they want to reserve a shelter. Now, I mean, somebody can show up with hopes that nobody's gonna be at the park and use it for no cost. But, you know, if they want to have an organized event, birthday party, whatever the case may be, and designate that shelter, then there is a fee in place.
Well, just keeping in the historic properties, for instance, John Book grounds out for weddings and whatever else out there. It's just the grounds. Of course, they have electrical and bathrooms out there. It's like $300 to hit out for a 1 day.
I think so.
Rental of that grounds. So, but now that's the whole facility, not the house and all.
Yeah, and the parks.
I would just like to see us have a different fee schedule for county resident compared to non-resident. Not saying they can't go up on whatever, I just feel like they're already paying for it.
It's their part.
Yeah, it's their part. But I also get that, you know, we got to keep it up.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we made significant, improvements across our park system, so I felt like that was justified and warranted.
But I think those improvements have been paid for. And I don't know that we offer much if you rent a park. You know what I mean? I mean, you get bathrooms, but other than that, what do we offer?
Well, I mean, our staff has to clean on a weekly basis. You know, we have one maintenance person that has to go out to all the parks on a weekly basis. Now we put someone in place on the weekends, to maintain the parks, because our maintenance position is off on Fridays. You know, so now we have a part-time position on Friday, Saturday, Sunday that comes in and maintains the parks in his absence. So, you know, we just added that over the last year because, you know, when Dwight was off work after Thursday, that's the most usage of the parks. And they're in bad shape on the weekends because of usage. So, you know, we put that part-time person in place to you know, to upkeep the parks, make sure they're looking good on the weekends.
I don't disagree with it, I don't know what the magic number is.
I need to understand better how we budget for the park as commissioners, and then there still need to be a fee for our citizens using it. I'm having a real problem with that concept. If we budget, maybe we need to budget more, but I just don't. Now, it's a public park, and also I just need more discussion, this is not to set it, but it should be open to the public all the time, people. And if somebody is gonna have a part of that, there need to be some kind of understanding, but it's something we can discuss that. But I know I would have a problem if I take my great-grand out to the park and they can't use it. I'll be upset because I want to be upset. I would be upset. Yes, so I think we need to, commission need to talk about this and then get back to it.
I think the designation is, difference is what he's saying is if you reserve a spot.
Yeah.
Not that you can't go out there and use it today with your grant, but if you want to reserve a table.
You want to have a party out there. You want to have a birthday party.
Make sure that spot's going to be available, then you will have to pay for that.
And if somebody's reserved that park, that doesn't mean that other county residents can't go.
Correct, they can still use the
They
facility.
can still use
They
it.
can still use the facility, it's just they're going to have that shelter or table or whatever.
But they won't have access to the restrooms.
Yeah, they would. Well, let me play that back. At Hammond Park and now at Gibson Park, they have access because those restrooms are on a timer for access. But at Washington Market,
And wait,
Wagram and Murray, you gotta have a key to open those restrooms for access. And that key comes with the rental.
So I look at it a little bit different than maybe someone else, but I think that all of our county citizens pay taxes to maintain our parks. What you're asking is that for somebody who wants the privilege of reserving it, and that therefore, you know, we know they're using the park. So for them to contribute to the upkeep of that park is not, I don't think, an unreasonable request. We were charging people to do it for the last however many years, you're just looking to increase that by a little bit.
I guess my concern about that is our citizens should be able to do the reserve and still not have to pay in first come basis. It's paying twice is an issue.
How much is it?
Then they range from $30 to $50 per park right now. And that's standard. That's not something that Scotland County created. It's standard for other recreation centers and facilities to have rentals and reservations on shelters and parks.
And then what we're reflecting on you is just, it seems to be a little,
I have to say, I agree with John. I mean, pay once.
taxpayer have already paid for it.
Well, I can't imagine we're generating a ton of income out of that anyway.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you know, sure makes the citizens feel a lot better if they can use park without
That's
paying
first
for
come, first served.
I mean, no more money. How much money does it generate a year?
A couple $1,000.
Yeah.
I mean,
So we're only talking about
Yeah.
$5,000. I mean, I'm like you, I don't.
Yeah, I think for perception purposes, it would be a bad move, in my opinion. I mean, if they need more money to raise it.
To raise
If they need more money, we can budget a little more,
Yeah.
it's $2,000 or $3,000. But for perception of a citizen, or what I'm gonna do is go to Hammond Park and just have the cookout and not really, what's gonna happen here? Nothing. So,
well, I kind of with John on that. I don't think they should have to pay to use the park. I mean,
Already paid.
Especially citizens.
Already
You
paid.
know,
Somebody from coming from out of town, that
Yeah.
a resident, it should be a fee.
Yeah.
But if you a resident of Scotland County, it's a tax.
Yeah, we just have no way of planning anything, you know, it's just kind of open, hey, you
Well,
show
I think you
up.
should, I think you
No, I
should get
think you could still.
Yeah,
call it
maintain
reserve.
it.
yeah,
Just
get a
look at that
permit.
fee.
Just say you gotta get a permit, but the permit's free. You know? If you're gonna have an event or a big
reserve.
party or something, you know, you got to reserve, still reserve the
Reserve
park.
it, but if you're a citizen, it's already paid for.
Yeah.
What happens in the event of damages in restrooms, you know, we give
Well,
out.
what happens now if they reserved it and they're $50 and they cover the
$50
We do take up a deposit, you know, but it's small and minimal, so I don't disagree with anything you guys are saying.
You may continue to do that, to get a deposit on it, just to make sure there's nothing tore up or whatever, but I can't imagine we're gonna collect much of a deposit, it's gonna make that much for that anyway, but.
And then you're gonna get people that said,
What are you collecting as a deposit?
Right now, it's just the key deposit, you know, make sure they return the key to the restroom.
Have we had any damage to the restaurant?
The most damage we get in restrooms is out at Scotland Yard, you know, because we keep those open. And they're constantly being vandalized year in, year out.
well, I know
Yeah, we
we
used to have that problem with Hammond, but
we had the problem back in the day when we had bathrooms. Several, I could name them.
Which is why all of our parks, the bathrooms, except for Scotland Yard, they lock in a certain time.
Yeah, we tore them up and we vandalized. Then they use them for other activities.
We've also proposed raising the fees out at Scotland Place as well. Right now, it's $200 for the first 3 hours, $100 deposit, $35 for each additional hour. Proposed with $100 per hour, which takes it from $200 to $300 for the first 3 hours, and $75 per additional hour.
now that I don't have a problem with.
And
It
that's
takes a
still,
lot more to operate that.
and it's still low in comparison with any other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we, that back room hasn't really been renovated or painted or anything since I've been there. And I'd like to, you know, paint that and make it look a little nicer for events. The room that we meet in for the advisory board. Yeah, the big room. So, you know, we'd like to go in and touch up the walls and paint in there. And I think by doing so, you know, we justify that price increase, you know, on an annual basis per rental. And then our multi-purpose rooms at Laurel Hill Community Center, Wagon Recreation Center, right now they're about they're $20 an hour, if I'm not mistaken. And the gym's $30 per hour. You know, we're proposing $40 per hour for the multi-purpose room, $60 per hour for the gym. You know, we have staff that goes in and maintains those rooms, you know, before and after. At Laurel Hill, you know, there's carpet in those multi-purpose rooms, and you know, we anticipate over time that those tiles are going to be damaged, you know, from spills or whatever the case may be. And you know, I just feel like it's, you know, $40 per hour to host a party or an event inside of an air-conditioned facility that's nice, and you got staff there that's courteous and friendly and assist you with your reservation, I just feel like it's warranted and justified. But if you guys feel it,
I don't have a problem with that
problem with that
either, because that's an indoor facility, that's, you know, I think just the park usage was.
That's right.
Yeah, just the parks, that's the only problem I have.
Just the
too,
parks.
so we want to come up with a plan to eliminate fees for Scotland County citizens. And
Now, if it's commercial, so somebody, if it's gonna be commercial use from a company or something, be a little different, but just for regular citizens, double a birthday party or, you know, but if we got a company that wants to have a, company day or whatever, I'd say charge them. Just for citizens, I don't think.
Individual families don't charge.
so basically, they contact us to set up the rental at no fee.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's an out-of-county individual, it ought to be a
There ought to be a fee.
$50 fee.
Yeah.
And if it's a corporation, it ought to be, if it's a company, it ought to be a fee.
Out of town, they'd be $100.
So we can establish this fee for out-of-town and companies at $100 per park per day. Citizens is $0.
That's what I do.
And then the other requests you've got, like you've got.
Yeah, have a,
But I would still continue to collect the deposit.
yeah, deposit for the bathrooms or
You
keys.
know, or just to have in case, whatever, but,
Going out to Dragon Park for citizens, individuals, free.
Would you-
What we're saying, you park.
Would you want to just do a first come, first serve for our parks?
Sure, it should be that's the way only we can do a fast schedule is.
I said, let's try. Still have to pay deposit for the keys to the
Yeah,
bathroom.
well, first come, first.
yeah, set it up first come, first serve, but, I mean, I don't.
Are you saying that you think that we're not gonna allow citizens to reserve a shelter for the bathroom, to have a family reunion in Waverly?
Well, like, the Dragon Park, we don't reserve those tickets.
Well, you-
People go out there at 8 o'clock in the morning,
You just got picnic tables, that's
Yeah.
not, to me, that's not.
but people go out there and put their coolers out there at 8 o'clock in the morning for an 11 o'clock. And people generally respect.
Even when you reserve it, the people that's there don't know that somebody's reserved it. You know, they just do like you said, they go up there, set up early in the morning.
Well, but I think if you reserve it, y'all put some kind of poster on the facility saying that at 10 o'clock, this place is reserved for the Gibson family reunion.
We don't.
But we should.
Well, I mean, we just got that weekend person in place, not too long ago, to be able to monitor the parks and go around. So prior to that, we didn't have anybody available on the weekend, or no staff was available on the weekend to go out and set up.
Okay.
Have we ever had any problems with that? That you know of?
None that I know of.
They kind of work themselves out.
Yeah.
Not with a reserve, not with an event.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
The problems in the park don't come from parties. Or at least not.
Just vandalism at night.
Yeah, it's just general vandalism that happens. It's not because of an event or a family reunion or anything like that. And it's just your primarily after-hour activities that you have our problem, I have your problem.
Okay, good, let's move along here. So you want to take it back and just bring it back maybe the 1st of June with how we kind of discussed it and tweak it if you want, feel like you need to,
Okay.
do whatever, and take a look at it just to see.
Okay.
We won't do nothing today, that way we'll keep the time. All right. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Sound good to you, John? Thank you, Brian. So, what else?
DSS, the big change there is foster care. Those costs are just going up. Part of that, that's a $400,000 increase, and it's just, we were probably going to wind up coming in. DSS is trying to manage that in their current year budget, but we may wind up coming in at the June to figure out making a request to the vote board, but right now, just especially with the number of kids that are in care that are going to a leveled treatment facility, they're getting harder to find and, they're very expensive.
With DSS, they requested how many cars? Vehicles.
Yeah.
How many is in the budget?
Two.
How many do we normally do?
No.
How about health department? How many do they request?
They I cannot, I can't remember, but I put one in there. So, now, also, this budget for DSS does not include an amount for Medicaid expansion yet. April and I were on a call with the state earlier this week. They're supposed to have numbers for April by the end of the month, which they're going to, the state is going to give us an amount that's going to cover some of the costs, plus there's going to be additional reimbursement. Once we get those numbers in, we would probably use and adjust this budget. But the goal is, from the state, is saying that this would be basically funded at a state federal level. So it would be neutral to the county. So however that's going to work out, we would be looking for an adjustment to this amount for the Medicaid expansion. We just have no idea what those numbers are going to be.
But it'll be a flow through whatever.
Yes.
I asked my question about vehicles, guys, because social workers, if you all recall, do come to share that concern. And I want to make sure that we adequately respond, because we told them that we would. And I know the health department has that issue as well.
Well, you said two are in there. We've given one, right, the Explorer. And we're not talking about high dollar cars.
Right.
State contract, probably gonna be less than $1,000.
And like the health department, they have a number of vehicles that are old, but they are, honestly, they're extremely low mileage.
They don't use them.
They don't use them.
But honestly, DSS uses some of their vehicles as a backup.
Yeah.
Sometimes they have to use it as well. I don't want us to negate that those are two serious needs.
No, I mean, but if two budgeted, we've already given one, we simply budget two more is the answer to that, and then we're at the 5.
Right. And then how about health department? I think they requested two. You said you did one.
How many did the health department request?
Two.
But with that, also looking at, when they do that, if we look at doing that, I think they have like 4 vehicles over there. If they're saying they're unusable, we need to just get rid of them. But, so right now I have 3 vehicles for DSS and health.
Did I hear, did someone in one of the meetings say that some of their staff prefer to drive their own car and get mileage? Did I?
That was back when we changed the mileage.
Yeah.
But, and was it that,
There were too many meetings back then.
was it the thought that buying the vehicles, well, obviously it saves wear and tear on their personal cars, which some of them would prefer, but would it be less expensive to have the fleet of cars than to pay mileage?
With it, the policy is that basically as long as there is a county car available, we'll take it, or you're not eligible for reimbursement.
So if you had it, but if you have enough vehicles, you could, we would reduce your cost.
And it winds up becoming a balancing act on how many cars you have versus who gets reimbursement. just figuring out that amount.
If you had 15 people, 25 people coming in reimbursement, that's their word of what they drove that day and where they went. I mean, there's some check and balance to that. There's no way you're ever gonna be positive. So if they're inflating that, padding that a little here and a little there, you're gonna spend more money. We watch it.
You find them padding that number, you know how to handle that, right?
Well, well, that and also, especially with DSS, it's making sure, you know, they would need a minivan, because they need to haul children.
We finished with that, cars? Am I saying this right? $40,000 on cell phones
This is for DSS.
for the DSS? $40,000? How many cell phones have we got?
Oh, you got $40,000,
And that,
and $25,000 for cell phones.
No, you got 40,000 for, oh, I'm sorry, 40,000 for multiple.
phones also serve as their hotspots when they're in the field. They can work in their case management system on the laptop. They're all in one price for that. Before they had flip phone, but then we also had to get a, like a nice shot device.
Right.
And so we came out just as cheap to get one phone that can do both.
So you got a landline that goes in every office? Is that right? Office phone?
Yes, whatever the new phone system is for the county.
Okay.
Is what we're on. It's agreed.
Wow, that's a lot of money for telephones.
It was a safety issue for some of them. A safety issue, trying to communicate.
The cell phones.
Yeah.
I'm not, that's part of it. Social workers are the only ones that have. So supervisors don't have.
All right, what else?
The other big changes, I guess, looking at, education, again, with this budget, going based on what the liaison committee recommended, and without additional guidance, the recommendation that is in here is at $10 million in current operations, $300,000 with, capital. Thereafter, we do have $385,000 of lottery funds that will go to, that would pass through for next year's budget.
And they're wanting another 600,000. That's why I kept asking that
Yeah,
question.
they want
Okay.
340.
They want to, yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right. And I know that came from the superintendent, but that's not what they told us in the liaison.
Right.
I'm assuming based on what you said, I think that just all that makes sense.
Yeah.
He's gonna.
Yeah. And I'll say it again publicly, I said it during the break, but I think that was the best school budget presentation since
I agree.
Yeah.
Since
Best
I've
I've
been
seen
here.
in 20 years.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good.
Now, I ain't saying to give him the money, but that was a very good presentation.
Explain
Yes,
it.
yes, did a good job.
Well, one of the best things on that he said was the hiring of actually a certified finance officer who's gonna be coming in every week.
So, but I also wanted to make a point during that time about that 2.1 you keep talking about South Johnson. That's not the only debt service that we're paying this county. We're paying for that other loan, whatever you want to call it, that's covering Sycamore Lane and the other one. We're paying that ourselves, right? I mean, that's $1.5 million we're paying.
Well, aren't we still paying that from sales tax revenues that are strictly to be spent on construction?
Right, with that, we're paying for next year, we have $3.4 million in debt service. $3,484,000 in debt service. Projection for sales tax, $2,139,000. Then the lottery proceeds of 385,000, that's generally applied there too. And so the net of those numbers is what we actually bill the schools. Like right now, Beth has already told their finance person, we're about to send them a bill for $985,000.
I'm sorry, how much?
$985,000.
The first figure you gave, which was the total debt payment, was
3,484,588.
And that's all of it.
That's all of it.
and you subtracted from that the,
2,139,000.
that's the sales tax revenue.
Sales tax.
And, sales tax revenue specifically.
That's restricted
revenue for school construction.
Yes.
Okay. And then 395 from lottery.
And 385 from lottery.
385. And that leaves a net negative.
985. Now, with this, on here, we're going to show, and this is part of the reason for the increase in the budget. Why we went from 50 million to 52 million. Even though we're billing the schools $1 million, $985,000, $1 million. And this is something our auditors got us to change. Because we're taking the debt our lease payment is the debt service for South Johnson. So we should be billing in $2.1 million. But then we offset that sales tax to drive that number down. So basically, we have to count that sales tax that we're gonna pay that $1 million that we pay ourselves to pay the debt service as revenue and an expense. I don't agree with that, but I also know you don't argue with your auditor much.
No, well, argue, just don't win.
Yeah, yeah, you can't win. So that's $1 million increase in our budget. And that is completely moving money from one side of the table to the other.
Right. It's a net zero, but
Yes.
Looks worse than it is.
Yeah. So that changes there. But we're not going from 13.5 million to the schools to 14.5 million to the schools.
It looks like you are, Rich.
Yeah. But what's in this recommendation is $10 million in current expense and $300,000 in capital. And as normally with the schools, especially with the liaison committee, unless y'all tell me to change, that's what, I've built mine on what the liaison committee is for.
I mean, I think we had this same discussion last year. I don't think another $300,000 is gonna make them or break them. I think, I kind of was wondering where they got the number from, but, it's not my decision, it's to collect the whole to make that decision. But I think we need to tell Kevin now if we're gonna do that, because if there's gonna be a change in it, because, our plan would be, as with John knows, that we would have our public hearing at the beginning of June for this budget. And if there's nothing unusual, we could vote on it that night. We could have a special meeting in the June, but we've got to vote on it by the end of June. But we need to give him any direction if we want that to change, or if you feel like we want that to change. You got to do the notice, so that would be before the meeting.
Oh, yeah, yeah. When y'all get
We're
done
approaching
here,
that date.
yeah, when y'all get done here, I will put it in the paper and run that notice that there'll be a public hearing on the 1st of, or the 5th of June.
And my overall budget's not going to change, or unless we get final numbers from DSS, or there might be something that
It would
But
change the.
there will be some
$400,000 if you had $400,000 in cash.
Let me ask this question. What's the difference in the numbers that, Dr. Logan presented and the way,
$300,000. $360,000.
$339,370.
that's what the liaison committee asked.
the liaison committee recommended no change.
We recommended no change, $10,300,000 capital, $10 million funding. He requested that we go from 10, we go to 10.3 to 10.6 total. And that's rounding it up and down, but,
And liaison committee, they agreed.
we all agreed to 10.3.
But that was prior to us hearing from you.
Yeah, well, he wasn't even here.
Okay, well, then we give them what? What is the offer? What? You all agreed to.
But that's
Yeah.
what we did, but I mean, we haven't met since then because we all agreed on it, they agreed on it, and that was the end of it.
So I'm saying I agree on it now.
Okay, you too. There you go.
Business is business.
Right.
You don't get to change every 2 months.
Right.
Without, fight,
I get you. So there's a consensus not to change that amount. Am I hearing that right?
All
Am I
right.
hearing anything different?
All right, I'm gonna say this, just, and it's gonna repeat, which you said previously, that's the most honest presentation I've heard from the school system in my experience here. I think they are more on the right track from that conversation than I've seen anything that they've done in the last several years, and that gives me great encouragement.
And I hope, and I think, as they move through this process, they're gonna probably find out they're not as financially bad off as they think. Not that they're bad now, but I think they get somebody in there, get their hands around it, they can squeeze that dollar a lot better than the way it was being done.
I just think that the more time they spend, the better their information's going to be. They're gonna be able to tell us more accurately what their needs are and how we can best serve those. And I think we should be receptive to that.
Right.
And I think that's the encouragement that I would like to leave it with, that I look forward to seeing. There are some things that I would love to have seen them do the last several years as far as average teacher supplement, getting it up to the state average, that we just never felt, we felt like they had resources available to them that they weren't using. And I just think this is a step in the right direction.
All right.
The other two changes and just hitting these in utility funds, solid waste fund, no significant changes there other than we are looking at a $3 per ton increase.
Have we shopped around on that?
We have not gone out for bid on that tipping fee.
I'm saying we might need to.
We can go out for bid on that next year.
What are you talking about?
You are environmental.
Or another landfill.
I got you.
Kevin, will you respond to Dr. Logan?
We are looking at a $3 per ton tipping fee increase for the city of Laurinburg. We have a special rate, so they're tipping below the gate rate. Those are just passing through the increases that we're paying.
What's their ton rate now? 47 or something?
Yeah.
47, so
45 going to 48, I believe.
less than 10%.
Oh, yeah.
And that brings them closer to the gate rate. And then with the water districts, and Charles is gonna send me what was passed last night, City of Laurinburg increased their water rates by 25%. And what we've done in the past is matching the county rates to the out of city rate.
That's 25% increase in water rate. And
25%.
25.
And then we're gonna have,
And then we take our, Charles gave the example, it's $12 per cup.
12.31 is what it was.
Yeah, so I assume that will translate to the county residents to $12 per customer. The city, though, that they increased their sewer rate, and I didn't hear you say customer, how much that was gonna be. Of course, that doesn't involve us.
That moves up just by the same amount.
Same amount, so we don't have any sewer, but that,
So is that gonna go to the county too?
that's gonna be passed on to the
County
county.
doesn't have sewer.
Because we buy water from the city, so our cost.
So we also buy water too. Did they go up?
Not,
Yeah, really.
yeah, they haven't yet.
They're probably will just to keep up with the Jones.
Yeah.
We know what to do about that.
And that's one thing about it, especially when you're looking at grant funding for the positions that we have. Your federal agencies do look at your rate structure. And they don't like funding low-cost systems. And I think with the last increases, the city went from a low cost to a medium cost, but the preference does go to a high-cost system.
So we still have enough points to get the.
Yeah. But for Laurinburg, I think a monthly water bill would have to be over $50 a month to be a hike. Yeah.
Talking about the water bill, have you got back with the engineers on that water?
I've sent out a request to engineers for proposals so we can select a different one. I've talked with Will now, so I've sent.
Well, let's do this. Yeah, because you're about done, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty much done.
Take that as you are. All right, David, you want to talk about the water thing? Now would be the time for that conversation. He ain't gonna have nothing to say now, what?
I've asked for the engineers.
What's the status? I want to know what the status and what time frame is on.
I've asked for engineers to give me their information, so I can have, by, I think Friday, June 2nd.
Joe said you had, I talked to Joe, he said you hadn't got back with him.
Okay.
He's the engineer. And, that done the previous water lines here. He done all the extensions here before the engineers had done.
I
He knows it very well, but he said you hadn't got back with him as of this morning.
Okay.
Said he's called you, left, 4 messages and 3 emails. I feel like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm gonna be straight up, I feel like you're dragging this thing out a little bit. And I ain't liking it too.
Yeah. I've sent out the request for engineers because we're gonna have to choose one.
Okay.
And I know I got the original email from him. And I'll have to check and check some of the others, but I'll forward him.
Okay.
the
I
request.
just, you know, next meeting comes, I wanna see something happening on this.
And ultimately, with the next meeting, the goal will be for at the regular meeting in June, for you to check, selected engineers for.
But I'd like to see something happening on this water, because I think you folks have waited long enough up there. I think they waited long enough. I've heard some of the other commissioners say the same thing. They waited long enough, and I want to see some wheels turning. That's all I got to say.
I have two things. One is, Kevin, I wanted you, I hate Brian there, but I know we're doing, and you're on that whole part of the board, Dookie. But one of the things I was talking to another commissioner about was ways that when they did a community deal, that they were able to kind of galvanize some support for volunteer work. And one of the things that they suggested they did was allow county staff to get some paid volunteer hours where, you know, someone at DSS, they say they wanna go for 2 hours and volunteer, and they still be compensated, if that makes sense. So I wanted to just see if that was something you and Brian could look into, because we wanna make sure it's successful. I know they do that with like the United Way Day of Caring or something, you know, you can take and go volunteer your time. So I wanted to see if that was something to look into, provided for staff. And then the second thing, I do want to just make mention that our community is hurting behind the death of those two young men. And I want to make sure that we said a word about that. It was a very tragic incident. You know, we're trying to help those families manage through that, but Samaz Morris and Zyshawn McKinnis were two young men killed in the car accident over the weekend. And our kids in our community are hurting.
Yeah, I get it. We talked about this yesterday, and it's a shame.
I guess it was divine intervention. As I was coming on 15501, I decided to make a circle around some of my properties. And then when I passed by my church, I had to go around. If I had come on home, I probably would have met him. Right there, 2 blocks from our church. My house is just across the field. So to see a small kid like this and one like that standing out there yesterday, you know, just looking at the scene, and they put flowers up, you know, it was just, it's heart wrenching. But there's nothing we can do other than just keep them in our prayers.
Anything else?
No.
You all got this today, and it says Community Playground Build Party Friday, June the 9th at Dragon Park. That is not a build party, that is a reveal party that I was told. So they're not gonna start the build that night, but it's gonna just be a start of revealing what they're gonna do. You got that. A reminder that the NACO annual conference is in Austin, Texas, July 21st through the 24th. If anybody intends to go, you need to get with Mr. Robinson and let them know. But all I can say is Austin, Texas, at the end of July.
I have no candles.
You ain't kidding, boy. And there was another one that you reminded me of earlier. The NCACC meeting.
August 24th through 26th.
August 24th through the 26th.
If anybody knows if they would like to go to that, let me know today, because they're going to open up the room block in the morning, and those things go like
Yeah, you know to go.
ice in July.
Where is?
In Raleigh.
Yeah, Marriott, and you and I went to that. Or maybe, anyway, downtown Raleigh.
I can't do tickets.
Who wants to? Who wants to?
If the 23rd and the 24th, they're having that legislature day. I can't go. I'm having a dental thing done that Tuesday afternoon, and I know I'm not going up there with a mouthful. But I mean, my fear and thought on that was we just did it.
That was what I said.
Yeah, we just did it. And, but I mean, if somebody wants to go, you can get with Jason on that too. But I don't see it benefiting us any. We keep doing the same thing with the same people with the same place.
And it costs $75 to do that. So.
So I will not be doing that. And I think that's all right now. Oh, no, tomorrow, STIP meeting here.
EOC.
I'm sorry, EOC. I'm gonna make you here. You watch, I'm gonna come here tomorrow. The STIP for the Transportation Advisory Committee for the COG is having their STIP pre-board. It's a chance you get to tell the COG, this is what the road projects we want in Scotland County that aren't on there. And I sent that thing out back about and how projects listed and whatnot. But that's tomorrow at 10 o'clock at EOC. And I think that's all that. Okay, anybody else?
item is to go into a closed session pursuant to two North Carolina general statute numbers, and I won't read them, but they're on the record. Before we do that, should we take a break and then come back and go into closed, or? I mean, we don't want to go into closed and take a break. Doesn't matter.
You're gonna take a break.
All right, why don't, let's take 10 minutes again until 5 minutes after. We'll come back and go into closed session after that. How about that? Is that good? Everybody good with that? Good with that?
All right, I have ended the